Thank
This
you.
is to inform the general public that this meeting is being held in compliance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. The annual notice was emailed to the Star Ledger and filed in the Township Clerk's office on November 30th, 2020, and published in the West Orange Chronicle on December 10th, 2020. Councilwoman Castellino,
Present.
Councilwoman McCartney,
Present.
Councilman Rutherford,
Here.
Councilwoman Williams,
Present.
Council President Matute Brown.
Present. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to the public who is here joining us for our Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 council meeting. Wanted to start, before we get started with the consent agenda, I just wanted to read into the record, and I will do this moving forward until the end of my presidency, a land acknowledgement as we start this meeting. We recognize that we reside on the land of the Lenape people, and we honor and give thanks to them for the stewarding of these lands for generations. I also wanted to thank the mayor for his proclamation. I'm not sure if everyone had the opportunity to listen to his proclamation and his statement on social media, which was shared, but I also wanted to share it herein. In the spirit of reconciliation, I encourage all citizens of the Township of West Orange today to take time today to celebrate Indigenous people of our region, including the Nanticoke, Lenni Lenape Nation, the Powhatan Lenape Nation, the Ramapo Lenape Nation, and the Raritan Nation, to name a few. Since their first contact with Europeans, people indigenous to New Jersey found their lives and lands relegated to the despoiling and dehumanizing forces of oppression, violence, and discrimination. From colonial expansion to systemic modern marginalization, we recognize that our indigenous people have too often been denied practical access to the resources and benefits of our society. In recognition of that stark history, I call upon us all to reassess geographic place names, statutes, monuments, and to fully reflect our state's inclusive values, to research and formally recognize ancestral connections to public and private lands throughout our region, to embark upon the difficult journey of truth-seeking in hope of finding healing, reconciliation together, and to squarely face the complete history of our indigenous peoples and recognize the impact that our nation's history has had upon their culture and lives. I call upon our educators, parents, elected officials, and community leaders to incorporate knowledge of and respect for our indigenous peoples in our schools, hearts, and commemorations. I call upon the state of New Jersey to take action to convey ancestral lands back to tribes for preservation of cultural resources. Therefore be it proclaimed that henceforth the second Monday of October shall be forever known as West Orange, as Indigenous Peoples Day in the Township of West Orange. I really wanted to thank the mayor for his recognition. We are working towards a more racially inclusive community here and everywhere. Also want to acknowledge his efforts and participation in supporting both the Hispanic Heritage Month that occurred, it's still occurring actually, September 15th through October 15th. And to all of my colleagues for their participation as well. And also want to acknowledge Italian Heritage Month, which began October 1st. And I was happy to see that the township was able to support the efforts of UNICO with the Italian flag raising in collaboration with some of my council members, my council colleagues that were able to attend. Unfortunately, I was in Trenton still at 5 o'clock and was not able to make it home quick enough from work. But am happy to see that our township at least is looking at inclusive community building and acknowledgement, because it starts with each one of us. I also have on the another proclamation from the mayor for the Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day and hashtag Light Up MBC National Campaign. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Whereas October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, let it be known that the Township of West Orange is pleased to recognize and observe October 13, 2021 as Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day, and hereby recognizes the hashtag LightUpMBC national campaign. Whereas breast cancer is the most common type of cancer among women in the world and the second leading cause of cancer death among women in the United States. More than 1 in 8 women and 1 in 833 men in the US will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetimes. In 2021, an estimated 284,200 Americans will be diagnosed with invasive breast cancer, including over 8,330 women in New Jersey. Whereas metastatic breast cancer occurs when breast cancer spreads to other parts of the body, including the bones, lungs, liver, and brain, and has an average life expectancy of 26 months. Regardless of early detection, approximately 30% of stage 0 to 3 breast cancer will return as stage 4. An estimated 44,100 Americans, including 1,250 New Jerseyans, will die from breast cancer in 2021, equal to 115 women and men per day, with 98% due to metastatic breast cancer. And whereas the national organization MetAviver Research and Support funds critical stage 4 metastatic breast cancer research, educates the public about metastatic breast cancer and lack of funding for stage 4 treatment. They aim to dramatically increase the current percentage of US breast cancer research dollars from under 5% to 30% for the already metastasized patient. The national hashtags for this initiative on social media fall under hashtag Don't Ignore Stage 4 and Light Up MBC. Whereas there is a national hashtag Light Up MBC campaign on October 13th every year to illuminate 115 landmarks in the metastatic colors of teal, pink, and green throughout the world, bringing awareness to the disease and to honor the daily number of lives lost to MBC. In partnership between the MetAviver and More Fight More Strong organizations, the day will culminate in virtual broadcasting, hashtag Light Up MBC Live, to communicate landmarks lighting around the country, share inspiring stories of the metastatic breast cancer community, and raise research funds. Whereas the pink ribbon is well known for representing the fight against early stage breast cancer, it is not inclusive of stage 4. Therefore, the metastatic breast cancer awareness tricolor ribbon includes teal, pink, and green. The teal color portrays healing and spirituality. Green represents the triumph of spring over winter, life over death, renewal, hope, and immortality. And the thin pink overlay signifies the cancer originated in the breast. Whereas metastatic breast cancer affects all races and socioeconomic classes. While Caucasian women see slightly higher incidence rates of breast cancer, the mortality rate for Black women with breast cancer is 41% higher than that of Caucasian women. And breast cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related death for Hispanic women. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Township of West Orange hereby encourages citizens to join the national effort towards awareness of metastatic breast cancer during October through MetAviver. Thank you to all for your patience and listening, and I will now open the floor to my council colleagues for their liaison announcements. Councilwoman Castellino.
Thank you, Council President.
Welcome.
Appreciate all that. I got to start off by thanking our downtown director, Megan Brill, and our West Orange Public Works Department. They did an outstanding job this past Sunday for the Mayor's 5K walk. Unfortunately, the weather was not outstanding, but all the volunteers that came out, we really appreciate it. It was pouring at one point in the morning when we were setting up, and we want to thank the runners who came out. The weather had cleared up for them. So a good time was had by all with the elements, but we appreciate that. And we got to thank the food pantry because for all the service they've done, and the downtown will be presenting them with the check soon for them. Council President had mentioned our heritage flag raisings for the Italian Heritage Month and for the Hispanic Foundation, and big thank you to Unico and the Hispanic Foundation for setting up those events. We appreciate it. And being all inclusive with all our residents, very important here in the township. Senior Services has been putting out a lot of information. I'm not going to name them all, but they've had a lot of great programs. And for those who are 55 and older, please go to the website, or you could call Laura Van Dyke at 973-325-4105, or get in touch with Noelia and get on the newsletter. There's so many such great information, great trips that they've been having for our residents. A lot of, trying to do more and more. Again, we're always COVID minded, but just a lot of great information and resources. So if you're not taking advantage of the resources, please do so. We've helped so many folks this past year or so with the pandemic and beyond. So please reach out and get on their email list. Recreation Department, very, very busy. This week, B Street Band, the original Springsteen tribute band, will be at OzPact at 7:30 this Friday night. So please come out, $5. So all you Bruce Springsteen fans, I know I'll be there. And Halloween is coming up. I don't have all the information. I don't have time to write it down. But on Saturday, October 30th, the rec will be having their events. And I believe they're also putting together once again for October. So please go to the recreation website. A lot of great events happening around town. So that is all I have for this evening. And just a big thank you to our fire department, and congratulations to our Deputy Fire Chief Phil Busey and Fire Captain Omar Guzman. I felt so bad I couldn't make the promotion ceremony, but congratulations to them both. And thank you to the fire department for a busy open house. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And you just reminded me to publicly acknowledge, although I did on social media, a huge thank you to our fire department as they were able to rescue my daughter, who was stuck for 40 minutes in the elevator. She was calm and collected. Unlike, parents, we're not always that calm and collected, but certainly wanted to say thank you to them. They worked quickly to be able to safely extricate her from the top of the elevator. It was stuck between floors, unfortunately, but they had a very soothing and professional way of calming my nerves. So thank you to them. Councilwoman McCartney.
Wow. Thank you. Council President, let me start with a thank you to you for reading the proclamations. Thank you. And to Councilwoman Castellino for all of that information. We were drenched on Sunday morning, so we're finally warmed up and dried off. It turned out to be a successful event, so that was great. I wanted to say that this is going to be a busy weekend in the Valley because the Arts Council has a new exhibit that's starting called Pieces of Street Art. Looks very interesting. So that begins on October 16th. And on the same night, October 16th, Luna Stage is having an outdoor theater stage. They are going to present the Frontiera Project, which is a bilingual production, it's touring, but it's a bilingual production of life experiences. Sounds very interesting. So we can visit lunastage.org or visit woarts.org to find out more about the exhibits at the West Orange Arts Council and find out when the gallery and gift shop what the gallery and gift shop hours are. West Orange Environmental Commission, we meet the last Wednesday of each month, And the chair and our forester would like to start working with West Orange High School students to identify heritage trees throughout the town. It's a program that is in other municipalities, and with as a tree city, it would be nice to have that here in West Orange. So we'll look for more information on setting that up. We'll have community volunteers. We also wanted to do a community, we have lots of community volunteers for a cleanup, and they're looking for a calendar of events. So we're working with the Downtown Alliance and DPW on setting up a calendar for people to come out at different sites and meet for cleanups. And we had a presentation from Geoscape Solar on the potential installation of solar carports at the municipal parking lot and the 2 parking lots at the high school. So we're really looking forward to finding out more ways to be more efficient with solar carports, and not just in town hall and the high school, but we can do that throughout the town. The West Orange High School Green Team met this afternoon also, and they're working toward their sustainable jersey certification. So they have a lot of things going on over there. The chamber met 8 o'clock this morning. We're still virtual Zoom meetings, but they are putting together plans for the Thanksgiving luncheon. Will be at noon on November 24th. And the planning board met at the beginning of the month. We meet the first Wednesday of each month. And we welcomed new public advocate, Sir Rob Tharpar, and the new board member, Chris Morgan. And during that meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission presented sites for the planning board. They recommended sites to the planning board to designate as historic landmarks. One was the Holy Trinity Church. One is Hedges Block, which we know affectionately as the former Main Street hardware store. The Williams House, it's right outside the gate of Llewellyn Park. It's the Williams McManus Lehman home. And the Hecker's Carriage House on Ridge Road, that was tabled, but we will revisit that when that comes back. So it's been a busy week. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. That sure has. Thank you. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, Council President. Unfortunately, I also was not able to attend the promotion ceremony this week for Fire Captain Busey and for Firefighter Guzman, but I certainly do wish them well and give them my best wishes on this part of their career. Super excited for them in their new roles. I wasn't able to do things this Sunday. Sundays are always difficult for me, but I have to say this, my church celebrated their 150th anniversary. So this weekend was packed with things for us. So didn't make the mayor's run again, but I'm no longer a runner, so I would not have been running anyway. Open Space Rec, a few things going on there. We've had several requests with regard to open space. We are considering them all. Also a request to strengthen the tree ordinance. We are going to consider that and talk that through as well. We have an opportunity to work with the New Jersey Red Bulls professional soccer team to have a mini pitch, a soccer mini pitch built in town. Mayor is supportive of the project. We discussed it in open space. So meetings have already been had. Red Bulls are excited about the opportunity, and we're going to continue moving forward. Hopefully, we can get a soccer pitch built in town. Tomorrow night is the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board meeting. Please do join in. And I know there are some folks that have some questions about sidewalks, and some of them are the same questions over and over again. But that is the group that will help make sure that those things happen. Want to also congratulate Chris Morgan on joining the planning board. Wish him the best as well on that commission. Joint meeting is in its budget season. So we are working through the budget now. It looks like there will be a less than 2% increase to each town, obviously including us. For those that don't know, the joint meeting is our, for lack of a better term, sewer commission. That's what I call it pejoratively, but they will finalize the budget this month, and we will look to keep under a 2% increase from last year. I think that's it for me. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Council President. All right, we'll start with Sunday, 5K Mayor's Run. Also, I was unable to attend as I am doing double duty, helping my husband with the passing of his dad with his mother. So we're in North Carolina as we speak, which is actually a great reason for us to have virtual meetings continue, because I am able to be here and present. The fireman's promotion ceremony was amazing. Very, very excited for Boosie and Guzman, and just really excited about what we see going on with our department. So congratulations to our firemen. The Historic Preservation Commission meeting is scheduled virtually for tomorrow at 7 p.m. Zoom instructions are on the township website, which is westorange.org. Both the Rent a House and the Rent Leveling Board October meetings were canceled. The next meetings will be in November. The Rent Leveling Board is still reviewing committee regulations to identify how best to assist West Orange landlords and tenants. And then the Rent Board will meet again and is meeting in person. However, there was a delay due to the holiday being on Monday. They decided to postpone to the next month. The West Orange Stop Suicide Advocacy Coalition held its 5K Run for Zach. Very well attended, wonderful event, beautiful weather. So excited to bring awareness and recognition to suicide prevention in West Orange, and happy to announce that the coalition will be working with the West Orange Scholarships to create a scholarship for West Orange students moving forward. Council President, I think that's all that I have to report today. Thank you so much.
I'm talking and I'm muted. Thank you so much, Councilwoman. I do just want, I'm going to make this reminder to my council colleagues and all of those who are on the panel in an effort to avoid the numerous Oprah requests. Can we please, if you have any questions, please just raise your hand as opposed to texting, so that that's one less Oprah request that we have to filter through and take time away to look through. So just a courtesy reminder of let's not text during the meeting. Just raise your hand and we'll interrupt and answer questions as they come along. Councilwoman Williams, I'm so sorry that I was not able to make the run, but I was helping my husband move. He downsized his office, which is a great feeling to say the least. We're happy to say that we're still in town, but it took, I can't believe that it took 12 hours to do with movers. I'm dumbfounded by that, but unfortunately was not able to make it. And Councilwoman Williams, I'm so sorry. My condolences to you, to your family for the loss of your loved one. Please express that to the family. We have a minute if any of my other council colleagues want to share anything else before we start. Please feel free to do so.
President, I missed one only because I put it when I talked about the Historic Preservation Commission coming to the planning board. I did say that there were 4 sites, and the last site is the State Diner. And I had just talked about all the work going on or the events going on in the Valley, and I moved that over there and I missed it. It is on their ledger in the Hunter Research Study as a pristine dinette built by the Coleman Dining Car Company. And they had photos of it, and it just really looks like a pristine dinette. So I just wanted to say, if anyone does get to the Valley next weekend, stop by the State Diner.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And right on time, Madam Clerk.
This is to inform the general public that this meeting is being, am I muted? No.
No,
This
you're
meeting is being held in compliance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. The annual notice was emailed to the Star Ledger and filed in the Township Clerk's office on November 30th, 2020, and published in the West Orange Chronicle on December 10th, 2020. Councilwoman Castellino,
Present.
Councilwoman McCartney,
Present.
Councilman Rutherford,
Here.
Councilwoman Williams,
Present.
Council President Matute Brown.
present.
Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all. The council is now in their public meeting.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Madam Moderator, we are going to ask those who want to speak to please raise their hands using the raise your hand function. I don't know, Madam Moderator, if there's anyone who is on the phone listening. Perhaps you can give them those instructions. And okay, great. And then also set up the time to 5 minutes.
Yeah, the
Thank
timer
you.
is being a little quirky. Hang on one
It
second.
was the last time also for Lauren.
I might have to go. All right, let's see if that works. Here we go. Okay, our first speaker up is Joe Fagan. Let me grab him for you guys. Hang on.
And please remember to state your name and your address when you begin your public comment.
It's not, speaker views not coming out. Hang on. There we go.
Can you start the clock all over again, please?
Yes, I will. As soon
Thank
as I
you.
find Joe. I'm lost Joe for a second. My screen went really small for some reason.
Huh.
And I don't know why. All right, let me stop the clock. I'm going to stop share for a second. I'm allowing Joe to talk. Let me go back to the clock. Okay, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And if you lost me, you for sure need glasses, but I am found, and that's the important thing. Good evening to you, Madam President and council colleagues and all members of the administration in attendance. As you know, I'm Joe Fagan, Public Information Officer, and thank you for the opportunity once again to briefly address the West Orange public this evening. I would like to remind residents about the leaf collection schedule. Although we are experiencing seasonal mild temperatures this week, falling leaves will soon be upon us. The Department of Public Works will begin picking up leaves on Monday, November 1st, 2021. Residents may start placing loose leaves in the gutter of the streets on Monday, October 25th, 2021. Regarding the placement of leaves in the street, please be aware not to block drainage, inlets, driveways, and crosswalks. Placing leaves in the street only applies to public municipal streets in West Orange. For county roads, please check EssexCountyNewJersey.org for additional information. And of course, for safety reasons, please do not park on leaf piles or allow children to play in them. All of this information and more is posted on our website, westorange.org. I would also like to mention that Main Street north from Park Avenue to Washington Street will be restriped. Currently, there are 2 travel lanes, and restriping them will reduce it to 1 travel lane and add a parking lane. I spoke with Lenny Lepore this morning, and he informed me that this will occur sometime towards the end of the month, and I just wanted to make residents aware. So watch for a somewhat new traffic pattern on Main Street between Park Avenue and Washington Street towards the end of the month. Very quickly, to save the dates, the West Orange Community Band will be performing on Wednesday, October 27th, 7:30 p.m. at the Liberty Middle School, and masks are required. The DEA's National Take Back Day provides an opportunity for our community to prevent drug addiction and overdose deaths. On Saturday, October 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., you will be able to drop off unused, expired, or unneeded prescriptions, pills, vapes, etc. to our West Orange Police Department headquarters at 60 Main Street. Finally, just a quick mention that on this day in West Orange history in 1929, the Thomas A. Edison Junior High School on Main Street opened as the first junior high school in West Orange. Of course, it is now known as the Edison Central Sixth School, and I'm proud to say I was part of the class of 1971 when it was Edison Junior High School. Thank you very much, Madam President, Madam Moderator, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fagan.
Next person would like to speak. Joseph Krakowiak, please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Moderator, you
I
have
see.
to, okay,
I see, I'm sorry.
that's okay. We're all learning this as we go. So I
Am I
think,
now unmuted?
just hang on one second, Mr. Krakowiak. We're just trying to put Mr. Fagan back as the panelist, and I think you brought over also Mr. Puglisi.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No need to apologize.
We're gonna let Joe, okay. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, can we set the time for Mr. Krakowiak,
Yes,
please?
name and address for the record.
Good evening, Joe Krakowiak, Grandview Avenue.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Krakowiak. I would like to the benefit of the clock on the screen, please.
So would I. Thank you,
Oh,
You're-
President.
sure.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, guys.
No need to apologize. I don't want you to feel stressed. I know this is not what you do every day.
No, it's not. I'm on share screen.
Not seeing your shared screen now.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, now let's try this one more time, Mr. Krakowiak, as soon as we,
There you go.
okay. Mr. Krakowiak?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, Joe Krakowiak, Grandview Avenue. Just have some questions on the agenda tonight. Resolution 261-21. Is this authorization of appraisals cover the balance of the properties in the downtown redevelopment area? It appears to be linked with the $7 million bond ordinance also on tonight's agenda. Does the borrowing for this initiative now total $20 million? And is the borrowing for these properties now ended? Exhibit A of the resolution for 20 Ashland Avenue, public records show an assessment of $35,900 and also show that Prism purchased the property in 2007 for $398,250. I wanted to know if those values were correct. And if they were, do you know any reason why the assessment is less than 10% 2007 market value? Resolution 264-21, which is the $4.5 million of redevelopment area bonds for the Executive Drive redevelopment area. Does this borrowing require a supplemental debt statement? And if so, what does the supplemental debt statement say is the issued and authorized debt? And if so, is there any reason why you would not place on the town website in the finance documents section this SDS where other SDSs from previous years are posted? What entity or entities repays the principal and pays the interest on these bonds? If payment is from the redeveloper, does the redeveloper get a credit against its payment in lieu of taxes? In other words, are the bonds paid by the pilot that would otherwise go to the township and county, meaning the bonds are essentially financed by the township? Resolution 266-21, which is the emergency resolution covering the evacuation at 275 Northville Avenue. This is following a rock slide and was just done in the last day or two. Just want to know how many units and people are impacted by this evacuation, and what's the estimated time that these people will have to be elsewhere, and what's that estimated cost? Ordinance 2661-21, which is another bond ordinance for 14.51 million. What does the supplemental debt statement say is the debt, and will you place it on the town website? Subsection I lists borrowing of $685,000. I wanted to know how much is for the stage equipment and what is that stage equipment for? Subsection 2, which is $2.025 million. How much of that budget is for Rock Spring Golf Club, and what is specifically going to be used for? Section 4, $2.714 million talks about upgrades to the cart paths and traps and the installation of a new lighting detecting system. I assume that means lightning detection system, Rock Spring Golf Course. Just wanted to get an explanation of that, and also how much that involves. Also, there are pool improvements to replacement all pool, plaster tiles, deck drains, and other miscellaneous improvements at the township pool. Just wanted to know how much that was going to cost. Ordinance 2662-21 to borrow $7 million. I assume that is for the remaining, to buy the remaining properties in downtown redevelopment area. And if there's an SDS, what does it say is the debt? And will you also place the SDS on town website? Ordinance 2663-21, it's $500,000 bond ordinance for Central Avenue redevelopment for remediation, demolition, and development. Has the township identified a redeveloper for these properties? What is the status of the search for identifying and gaining a redeveloper? Does this borrowing require a supplemental debt statement? If it does, what does it say is the debt? And is there any reason why you can't place this on the town? Also, the Knights of Columbus have a pancake breakfast fundraiser this Sunday in the basement of Our Lady of Lourdes Church, 8:30 a.m. to 12 noon. We also serve plenty of eggs and sausage. Tickets are $10 for anyone 13 and over, $5 for children 6 to 12, and the proceeds go to charities in the West Orange area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? My screen is being really wonky.
You do have, there is someone who has raised their
Yes.
hand.
I
Okay.
know it's not showing up on the same screen for some reason. But I see. We have somebody initials DT.
Did we transfer Mr. Krokoviac back to,
I will.
thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, hang on one second, GT, just so that we can restart the clock. Just
Sure.
one minute, please. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Can you see my clock?
No,
I'm sorry, you said no?
no, we can't see the clock.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Darren Tobia. I live on Columbia Street.
Go ahead. Thank you.
So Columbus Day continues to be a painful day to a lot of people for different reasons. I personally fail to see why two ethnic groups can't honor their ancestors on the same day, but this is supposed to be an age of listening, so I think we all need to listen to each other. I was hoping someone in our community would step up and lead a dialogue, and I don't know why we are all so scared of dialogue. Columbus Day may be an unfortunately named holiday, but I assure you it was never intended to celebrate genocide or white supremacy. Columbus became a mascot for Italian Americans because our ancestors saw everyone else admiring them or admiring him. They came to this country mostly in the 19th century and saw cities and streets named after him. Our nation's capital, the District of Columbia, is named after him. And our ancestors foolishly thought that if they claimed this Northern Italian man for their own, maybe they would finally give us the respect we deserve. Columbus Day is a day to honor ancestors who came here with nothing, fought and died in wars, and built cities like Newark, Orange, and West Orange. But there is a precedent for erasing some of the contributions of Italian Americans. The old First Ward in Newark used to be Little Italy, was bulldozed and is now named after Winona Littman, a woman who was a trailblazer in the Black community, but she has no ancestral ties to Newark. Last summer, the Columbus statue was removed from Newark, will now be renamed after Harriet Tubman, who, of course, her contributions need no explanation at this point. And now in many places, the Italian-American holiday, Columbus Day, is being replaced with Indigenous Peoples Day. And again, I fail to see why two ethnic groups cannot happily honor their ancestors on the same day. There has to be a better way to resolve this. And we need compassionate leaders to guide us in these difficult dialogues, and we need to eventually come together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? We see Deborah Feinberg. Go ahead, Deborah. Please say your name and address for the record.
Deborah Feinberg, Cullen Drive, West Orange. I just want to take a moment to thank Mayor Parisi and the Township Council.
Ms. Feinberg, I am so sorry to interrupt. I would just like to see the clock on the screen before you begin. Thank you.
I guarantee it's going to be less than 5 minutes.
Let me restart.
Sure, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Feinberg.
It's okay. My name is Debbie Feinberg of Cullen Drive in West Orange. I've been a resident for 36 years. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mayor Parisi and the Township Council for the proclamation honoring the Metastatic Breast Cancer Awareness Day tomorrow and for supporting our efforts. My niece is a victim. You have been supportive in the past, and I just want to say that it is only through raising awareness, advocacy, education that we will hopefully one day beat this disease, which is so devastating. So I know that lots of things happen that are good and bad in town council and in West Orange, and everybody has all kinds of reactions, but I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of my family and all those who are suffering. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ms. Feinberg.
Okay. Sorry, I think that's just Anthony Puglisi left, but I have to find the screen again.
You're sharing screens.
Right. I can't get, for whatever reason, the panelists and the attendees aren't on the same screen. So I have to hunt around for them. And now I've lost everything. Hang on. Do you see anything, anyone else other than Anthony?
I just see Mr. Puglisi. Yes, that's it.
Okay, let me,
And if there's anyone else who wishes to speak, now is the time to raise your hand.
for whatever reason, my screen is not showing. Hang on. My screen isn't showing them. Let me find Anthony. There we go. No.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good evening. This is Anthony Puglisi representing County Executive Joe DiVincenzo.
So sorry, Mr. Puglisi, let's give Megan just 1 second to start the timer.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Puglisi.
Thank you very much. I just want to add on to something that Mr. Fagan said earlier about leaf collection. The county leaf collection schedule in West Orange begins on October 18th. So the week of October 18th, we'll be collecting leaves in West Orange. On November 15th, the week of November 15th, and then the week of December 19th. So if residents of West Orange can have their leaves ready just on those weeks, that's when we'll be coming through to collect them. Also, of course, we are continuing our vaccination and testing efforts at our 3 vaccine and testing locations, as well as a host of mobile sites that are going throughout the county. We are trying to keep up with the changes in who's eligible for receiving booster doses. So you just need to look at essexcovid.org to get the latest information about that. Next month is the return after a COVID hiatus of our Holiday Light Spectacular at Turtleback Zoo. That'll start in mid-November, and I'll share more information as that becomes available. And then just finally, when West Orange sought to preserve the Crestmont property, or the 94 acres up there, Mayor Parisi did reach out to the county executive to get some assistance through the Essex County Recreation and Open Space Trust Fund. So the process did take a while, but the Board of Commissioners approved a $750,000 grant at their last meeting. So we are pleased to support West Orange in its efforts to preserve open space, and we wish you best of luck with that property. That's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Puglisi.
We do have one other member of the public,
Sure.
Love
Yep.
Gallard.
Okay.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Love Gaylord. I live at 31 Park Drive North.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. So I'm calling in or coming in tonight to discuss a problem I'm having with my property. I moved here just 5 years ago, and I love West Orange. I tell you, it's a wonderful community. However, when there was a storm in 2018, raging waters came from the Llewellyn Park side and caused over $50,000 in damages to my home. And come to find out, my next door neighbor, it had happened to his house several times. So this past Hurricane Ida, I have about $100,000 worth of damage. And it was the same from the raging waters from the creek or somewhere in Llewellyn Park. It was so heavy that it broke down both of our the fence in my neighbor's yard, and it knocked over 10 feet of 50-pound each slabs of retaining wall. It broke my windows out, broke out my garage door, and it filled my garage and basement with 6 feet of water. And then it receded with all mud and sludge. I'm still cleaning up. I'm still having contractors and things come to my house. I stayed out of work for almost 3 weeks because I just couldn't handle both. I lived in a hotel for 2 weeks, and all type of things have happened. I'm only asking the town council to please look into rerouting that water so it can just go down the street rather than our properties. We live right at the wall. So they keep saying Of course, I've talked to everyone that I needed to talk to before I came to you, because I know how to follow the chain of command. And they keep saying, it's the creek, it gets dirty, debris gets in it. This is beyond debris. This is beyond cleaning the creek. But if it keeps happening and ruining our properties with millions of dollars in collective damage on this side of Park Drive North, we're neighbors. It's unneighborly to just leave us out there, and for you, the council and the mayor, and then Llewellyn Park to turn your backs on us and not collaborate to come together for us. We're a community, and I love West Orange. I cannot believe I'm being treated like this when this happens to me. I'm distraught. I'm mentally disturbed. I was having nightmares. Okay, and I'm still trying to repair. I'm going to have almost $100,000 in debt to the SBA disaster, because what my insurance and what FEMA is still not enough to secure my property. And I don't want to move. I love it here. And I'm just asking you, the town council, to put the pressure on to come up with a plan to reroute. It's not about debris. It is about the route of how the water comes streaming down. I don't know how fast water could have come to rage to knock over 50-pound slabs, 10 feet of it, and all the fencing in my neighbor's yard this time. I don't know what kind of pressure that is. Not debris. So please work on a new plan to reroute the water so it can go right down the street, right into Main Street, rather than our properties. Please, I beg you. I love living here, but right now I'm emotionally disturbed, and I have to be at work and raise my child and deal with all these contractors and loss of my own money. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gaylord.
Okay, any other members of the public that wish to speak? Seeing none. Oh. Okay, it looks like you're good to go.
Council President, you're
The
muted.
panel just popped back. I'm not sure what I did.
No, you're fine. That's fine.
All right, sorry guys, I'll be better next time.
No need to apologize. I know that you're trying to maneuver something that you don't do every day, so that's fine. Did you want to, if it's too much trouble to share the screen with the agenda, that's also fine. We can just call out what we're discussing. But feel free to try to share it while we start responding to the public comments.
Can you see?
Yeah.
1 second.
Sure.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you. I want to start my response backwards with Ms. Gaillard. I am so sorry. I do hear the distress and concern of your voice. I did see your pictures and completely understand being in a position where you're having nightmares and really mentally distressed over this situation. I did reach out to our township engineer, which I know that you have also spoken to. I don't believe that he's on the line this evening, but I do know he did explain some of the things that you shared with respect to the pipes. I know that the township at one point did do some cleaning services of the pipe and were not able to locate where the beginning of that pipe was. And I also know that you also had a private sewer company come out and do the same. And I'm not making excuses, but I do want to share that the mayor has had conversations with our township engineer to come together to develop a plan on how to remedy this for you and your neighbors, because I understand it is not just you. I know it is not an excuse to say Hurricane Ida was an unprecedented storm, but that is also a consideration. But I want you to know that we are aware. I know I've reached out to the township engineer, and the township engineer has responded that he and the mayor are discussing a plan to see how they can alleviate this issue for you. So please continue to keep us posted. And as soon as we're able to get together with our township engineer, certainly we'll do that. But you're not by yourself. We love that you've chosen West Orange to be your home. It is a great place to raise families, and don't want you to have this experience as a lasting impression for you. So we'll I'm sure, collectively come to some sort of resolution for you. Mr. Puglisi, thank you and for sharing the commissioner's support and the county executive support of our efforts to preserve 95 acres of Crestmont. We are very grateful to the county and all of their support that they provide for our township. So thank you for that information. Ms. Feinberg, it's always the case where advocacy, raising awareness, education is what changes the public consciousness and why we have to continue to talk about this. I remember when you first came on and we supported the proclamation, it was an eye-opener because you wouldn't think that metastatic breast cancer would not be inclusive in the raising awareness of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but certainly thank you and your family for your efforts. Mr. Tobia, I hear you, I do. I don't know if it's a matter of not having discussions. I will suggest that the Human Relations Commission is the entity for the township to discuss these things. And I certainly am grateful for your comments. I know that that the township is trying to be more racially inclusive, but I don't believe it is the intent to, I know it's not the intent to erase heritage. I personally feel that we need to, in collaboration with the Human Relations Commission, certainly celebrate the Italian heritage culture and highlight and elevate those who did contribute to building what is our country. Just as many efforts are made for, those in the Hispanic community or those that now in the indigenous community. I think that the reason that we are elevating the Indigenous Peoples Day is because they've been neglected and they've been relegated to a part of history that they do not belong in. They are still here. They do still live here. For me, the removal of honoring one individual does not mean that we do not celebrate and honor and should not celebrate and honor those who are of Italian heritage and who did bring to this country, just as many other immigrants did, hopes and dreams and worked hard to build what we have today as America. So I do encourage you and to reach out to the Human Relations Commission, and I certainly will have that conversation and see how alternatively we can celebrate and elevate those who are of Italian heritage descent without specifically having to say Columbus is somebody who we honor. Instead, the Italian heritage culture is who we should be honoring. But I really do appreciate your sharing your feelings about that. Mr. Krikowiak, I'm going to leave the discussion for the ordinances since they are on first reading, as you know, to that time when we do discuss ordinances on second reading. Let me try and catch up here. I know that Mr. Trank is on the line, and I think Mr. Trank's on the line, and Mr. Gross is also on the line. With respect to why aren't the supplemental debt statements on the website at this time, Mr. Gross can correct me if I'm wrong, but the council has not approved anything yet. And I think that it would be prudent to post those when the council and if the council approves the resolutions or the ordinances that pertain to any increase in the debt statements. I think that your question with respect to what entity pays the bonds, are the bonds paid by the pilot, is a rhetorical one, as you have sat here in my position for 10 years and understand that those are RAD bonds, correct? So there are no recourse bonds. It is something that we have discussed. And Mr. Gross, are you with us? I'll give him a few minutes and when he.
Yes, Council President.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Just Mr. Krokoviac had a question with respect to what entity pays the bond, the non-recourse bonds and pilots. And is it essentially financed by the township? Can you just explain for the public's purpose, as Mr. Krokoviac knows well, what those non-recourse bonds are?
With a non-recourse bond as part of the financial agreement that was agreed upon between the developer and the township, a certain portion of the pilot is dedicated to a repayment of those bonds. If the pilot doesn't exist, or if there is a shortfall in the pilot amount for some reason, that would be reduced, the amount of money that's paid back on the bonds, and therefore there's no recourse to the township for that differential. So if that were to occur, the township would not pay anything from its revenue sources, and then there's a portion of the pilot above and beyond that, which will never go to pay for the repayment of the bonds. So it is a repayment from the project itself, and it comes from a portion of the pilot payments.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Mr. Krokoviac, I think that you also asked, and I'm sorry, I was trying to write as quickly as I could. Your questions, you asked whether or not the authorization of the appraisals cover the balance of the acquisition. Does it total 20 million? That is something we will discuss during that time of resolutions. I'm sure my council colleagues also have questions, and your question should be answered at that time. Does the borrower require a supplemental debt statement placed on the website? Again, when and if the council acts, at that time it will and should be placed on the website. You also asked with respect to resolution 262, the emergency resolution, how many people and what's the estimated cost? Do not know the estimated cost, as this just happened. There were 40 units that of tenants that were relocated. And Mr. Trank, thank you for jumping back on. If you can discuss that or answer
Sure.
that question. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Council President. Basically, as I tried to lay out everything in the resolution, specifically at about 6 p.m. last night, Mr. Gross called me and provided me with a letter that Langen Engineers had issued on Friday. And that letter specifically, and it's been given to every tenant of the project. The project has been in existence for close to 100 years. It's 44 units. As a result of Hurricane Ida, there was a failure of the slope. 4 or 5 units had already been immediately vacated. But as a result of the Langen letter that we received last night, the decision was immediately made after we consulted with the owner and after we were not able to provide any evidence that there was not a potential risk to the remaining tenants, that beginning last night at about 10:30 p.m. and continuing until about 1 a.m., the tenants were all provided emergency housing at the Courtyard by Marriott and the Wilshire Grand. So specifically all day today, and Mr. Gross and I were at the site this afternoon. We've been communicating with the contractors, with the owner, with the public adjuster and whatnot. We do not have a prognosis now. We're hoping that engineers will be brought in to provide that. And until they are, it's the position of the township that an emergency exists and that no one can inhabit those units at that project, which is, on North Field Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Trank, for that information. It is quite obviously distressful and concerning, but very glad that the township has taken the position to immediately act upon notice for the safety of the residents. I know that you also shared that the superintendent has also been made aware to be able to provide services to those families who have students in the district to be able to access school and meals and things like that. But I certainly hope for the best, although realizing that it's Mother Nature and it's going to take some time to process. And
yeah, Mr. Algrino and Ms. Van Dyke have been instrumental. They're hooking people up with FEMA. We're attempting, again, all aspects to provide emergency services. And again, the local hotels have been excellent. And again, it's a day-by-day thing. We do not have an answer. We're just hoping to help these families get situated as quickly as possible. And again, the police and fire have been on scene, and it's a serious condition. And I think everyone is taking it in that vein, which is appropriate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Trank. Mr. Kukorviak, I think the rest of your questions pertain to ordinances that are on first reading. If the council decides to discuss them during first reading, we'll have those conversations. If not, as you know, these matters are discussed during second reading with public participation as well. And so if we don't answer your questions today, certainly feel free to come back tomorrow and 2 weeks when it's on for second reading. I'm sorry, I just saw Mr. Lepore jump on. Mr. Lepore?
That's correct.
How are you? Thank you for joining us. I did share with our resident, Ms. Gilliard, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but can you just speak with respect to what you shared with us, next steps, what the process is, or give us a historical perspective the way you did in the email, and then what potential next steps are.
Well, there's two aspects to this. One, Ms. Gilliard has a drain inlet at the base of her reverse driveway, which means it slopes away from the street right in front of her garage, which apparently isn't draining properly. I'm not certain whose responsibility it is, but we've made efforts before to try to clean out that inlet, and we'll make those efforts again. That's certainly not necessarily going to make a difference in a big storm like we had from the remnants of Ida, but there are a lot of other lesser storms that help drain water away from her driveway. So that's the first thing. Second is we've had a history of debris coming out of a stream in Llewellyn Park that accumulates, especially in rains like we did 5 weeks ago, against an entrance pipe. That entrance pipe is the start of a drainage system that goes all the way down to Main Street, under Main Street, and into the Wigwam Brook, which is located between Ashwood Terrace and Harrison Avenue. So once that debris piles up in front, and that's debris that's really being taken downstream by the torrents of rain and water, then that drain is clogged and water will overflow and go into her neighbors' yards, both uphill and downhill of her. So the next step we're going to look at doing is providing some type of, getting an engineer to design some type of, you may call it a check dam. We've also called them through the years cow catchers, to collect that debris well before it has any chance of clogging that pipe.
So just a follow-up question, Mr. Lepore, and obviously since the debris that is being accumulated by the ponds in Llewellyn Park, what remediations, if any, has Llewellyn Park taken?
Well, again, I'm not always sure of where the source is. Okay. I would have thought after a couple storms where this has happened before, there would be much diminished amounts of debris, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm not always so sure where this is accumulating. Sometimes I'm just wondering if some of it may be disposed alongside the stream. I won't say in the stream, but alongside the stream, and maybe when the stream gets high enough, that debris is now captured and is carried downstream. So those are some of the things we're looking at. I know we do have periodic meetings with Llewellyn Park to make sure that stream is kept clean. Very often we're making sure that head wall is clean, but it doesn't, once you bad rain like that, it seems as if it doesn't make any difference how clean it was in the morning. It's going to get clogged with debris during the storm.
Okay, well, I certainly, please do keep the council appraised of any plans that you're able to come up with to help our residents in that area.
I have a meeting with an engineer later this month.
Okay, wonderful. And I do know that this storm, although it's not the first one, this storm is unlike any other storm we've had. So obviously the damage that has been experienced by many residents is unprecedented. But thank you, and certainly let us know, next steps after your meeting with the engineer.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, that's all I have in response. Councilwoman Castellino.
Thank you, Council President. And just to pick on back your last conversation, Mr. Lepore, I recall a couple years back, my husband's aunt had actually lived right next door to Miss Gilliard, at number 29, I believe it was. And I remember there being an issue years ago with, she didn't have what she had with this storm, but was there landscapers dumping in Llewellyn Park, and that's why the creek was getting overflowed? Am I remembering this correctly, or?
I've never seen that done, so I don't
Okay.
want to make accusations. It does
Yeah.
look like some of that debris could be related to landscape debris that's been cut. And like I said before, doesn't have to be put in the stream, but if it's alongside it, and the water rises high enough, that debris will carry away. We did have a similar problem over by the Essex House on Northfield Avenue, where a few years ago, the county took down some dead trees in the South Mountain Reservation near Walker Road. And they thought that those trees are out of harm's way, but not when it rained like it did on September 1st. That water rose high in the reservation and carried those trees downstream until they eventually couldn't get any further.
All right, just a recommendation that when you have your meeting, maybe they could check periodically to make sure that it's not landscapers dumping there, and they put up a security camera on their part, because they do need to be a working partner to help resolve this. So thank you. Ms. Feinberg, thank you for all your advocacy with the awareness, with the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Very, very important. I know the kids at the high school with all their games wearing the pink this time of year. So it's just so important that we get the word out. Let's see. And Councilman Krakowiak, I think most of your questions were answered. And I think on first reading, we should address those questions just so they don't fester about, and just get some, just get the right, I don't want any misinformation about the ordinances to be out there. So we should answer anyone's questions that they have tonight, and just get it done with. Mr. Fagan, I got to thank you. You had attended, I didn't mention in my report because I had a lot tonight, but you went above and beyond for the Downtown Alliance this weekend. You were raising funds for your historic walking tour with your not the walking tour, with the markers, your historic markers. And you attended the my 1980-81 Mountain Rams reunion this weekend. and was a great presenter there. So we welcomed you. You did a great job and raised some money for the Downtown Alliance with the reunion committee, and a great time was had by all. It's been 40 years since I've seen some people, and it's always a treat when folks come into town that haven't been here in a long time and see all the great things that we're doing. So it was fun to answer a lot of questions, and Mr. Fagan to give them the historic perspective on a lot of things. So it was a good time. So we thank you, and the Downtown Alliance thanks you for going out there to fundraise for us. Mr. Tobia. So before I get to you, I just want to also thank Mr. Tranka and Mr. Gross for today, for taking the time with our residents, and hopefully all will go well with the building. I know we'll have that later on with the resolution, but just being so proactive. What happened in Florida this past year was heartbreaking, and thank you that we try to be as proactive as possible so that kind of tragedy doesn't happen here. So Mr. Tobia, we celebrate everyone, and this is something that we do very, very well here. And I'm all supportive of celebrating Indigenous People Day. I received a lot of phone calls when the mayor had put the proclamation out. Obviously, I'm a member of Unico. We had our flag raising on Thursday. I do have a personal problem myself in sharing, in renaming Columbus Day a different day. I think it should have been renamed Italian Heritage Day, and also have Indigenous Peoples Day, because that's what we do. And I think, like I said, we do that well, and we're proud of that. And it just create, some people may say it's silly that people shouldn't, feel or harbor feelings, but it just unnecessarily creates ill feelings for some. And that's a shame, because that's not what the intent is. And I think sometimes, people feel that way, that their history is being erased. And I know that's not what the intent is, or that what's being done, but to tell someone not to feel that way is hard. So, we try to move forward all the time. We try to be inclusive. We try to do the right thing. But the president named Monday Indigenous Peoples Day. The mayor's being supportive and trying to, to celebrate, and rightfully so. So, Italian Heritage Day. I think the president may name that list this past Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go back and read the article to make sure I'm not misspeaking. But we celebrated October 7th this year for our community. And again, the people of Unico, they've been they've been so proactive in trying to move forward. They have spent so much time raising money for our community, our food bank, and we appreciate all of their contributions, as we do with everyone here in the township. So again, thank you for speaking up. And yeah, I agree. There should be more dialogue, so there won't be any ill feelings with residents. And I think that's important. So thank you for speaking up this evening. And that's all I have, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Castellino. Councilwoman McCartney.
Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful comments, colleagues. Thank you. Since Lenny is still here, I do want to say thank you to Lenny. I did speak to Love Galliard, and this has occurred in the past, and I appreciate the fact that it wasn't just because of Ida. This has been an ongoing issue, and I just wanted to thank Lenny for taking this course of action to try to resolve this for her, because you could hear how distraught she is and loves her home. And those reverse driveways, I know there's another one Lenny deals with on Woodland, so it is a problem, and hopefully we can reroute the water And yes, talk to Llewellyn Park about keeping the brook clear, but really do some type of, what Lenny said, a check dam. And I thought he said a cow collector. I tried to write that down, but thank you for taking that course of action for her. If Anthony is still here, Anthony Puglisi, I wanted to ask Anthony, and we could talk offline, but I'm seeing more and more incident on Prospect Avenue with deer. And I know the Strider lights worked out on Cherry Lane. And I'm wondering if that's something that we can consider for Prospect Avenue as well. And a thank you to Mrs. Feinberg for coming back, because I know she has spoken before, and raising awareness just means so much to so many. And when we know better, we can do better. So thank you for that. Darren, I appreciate your comments. I really do. I want to say we do try our best to listen to all. And I say that because just within the past 2 months, collaborating with the Human Relations Commission, not only UNICO, but the West Orange Hispanic Foundation's Asian group. There's also, we had an Indian flag raising and numerous vigils. So we do want to honor the trials and tribulations of all ancestors, to respect and honor them. So I think the town does do an outstanding, I do agree with Council President. I think we do an outstanding job recognizing that. And I know that with the groups that we have in town, we can continue to do that. Thank you, Council President. And if there are questions that can be answered on first reading, I think that is important to do as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilwoman McCartney. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, Council President. I do agree with my colleagues. If we can answer Mr. Krakowiak's questions tonight, have some robust discussion, that would be good. To the rest of the callers or the public commenters, thank you for joining us tonight and for your comments. I sympathize with Ms. Gilliard, or I wrote Gaylord, so I don't know if I got that wrong, but certainly do sympathize with you and support you in finding a long-term solution to the problem so that you don't have to keep facing it storm after storm. To Ms. Feinberg, again, thank you for your advocacy. And to Mr. Tobias, these kinds of issues tend to be divisive in communities, and people tend to go into their own corners. I want to thank you for recommending that we have some dialogue around it, and we can. And it should be frank. These are opportunities, I think, to kind of bridge the divide as long as we communicate well around the issue. Christopher Columbus has a narrative, or had a narrative written about him that completely obliterated all the horrible things he did. As that came to light, different decisions have been made about whether or not we honor and how we honor him. Some places have decided to keep names and statues, and some others have not. I don't agree with honoring him, but that's my personal opinion. And I do think we need to discuss it, because even if we agree that Columbus should not be honored, there will be folks that take that personally, that feel like they are under attack. And in that moment, doesn't matter what the decision is, they're not going to be happy. It's an opportunity, I think, for us to sit down and have a conversation about who we should honor. Some of my favorite, well, I won't go down that road, but I think it's important to have a conversation about who should be honored. And so I welcome that and would certainly participate in that. And we'll look for an opportunity to lead in that regard. So to both Mr. Tobias and to Ms. Gilliard, please reach out to me directly. My phone number is on the westorange.org website. That's it for me. I'm going to reserve the rest of my comments for the ordinances on first reading. Thank you, Council President.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Council President. So I will Bring it on home. Mr. Fagan, Mr. Puglisi, thank you as always for your updates on the township as well as the county. It looks like we're collaborating very nicely and partnering, making upcoming activities do well together. To the comments from Ms. Gaylord, thank you so much for coming to the council meeting and making us very aware, as well as the community, of your unfortunate occurrences due to weather and such. It is your willingness to come in this type of forum to make sure that we can create resolutions to the concerns of our residents. So again, I thank you and I look forward to your return when we have come to some type of resolution and your positive report to the community as well. And that would be something that I encourage all of our residents who come before the meetings to express their dismay. That as the community, the people of our township, administrators, workers, do resolve the things that are going wrong, that you come back and let us know that those things have been resolved, rectified, and things are going well, so that we don't seem to have just a pity party when we have our township meetings, or not necessarily a pity party, but just the things that are not going well. We also want to know what things are going right. Ms. Feinberg, again, thank you for your advocacy on metastatic breast cancer during the month of October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Mr. Tabaya, I agree. Conversations are always good. We just have to be willing to bring the parties to the table and have those honest conversations. I will agree that West Orange is a diverse community that has been open to having those conversations, whether it be on a social media platform. We know all too well those platforms that engage in robust conversation, but I don't think conversation is something that we are not willing to do. We just have to make sure it is a healthy conversation that is not meant to demean either party. Mr. Kukoviak, again, we will deal with a lot of your concerns when we get to the ordinance. And I also agree with my council colleagues that whenever there is a concern or unreadiness, maybe that we should, as a practice, review how we respond to those comments, whether they all be, pushed back to second reading, or whether or not we address some of those things. So perhaps we can avoid some of the conversation on social media that is negative, and we can get ahead and in front of when you say nothing, people get to make up their own narrative. But when we put out the correct information, then that leaves little room for chatter. Perhaps they may not agree, but at least the facts have been presented. I think that will complete a response to everyone who has come out this evening. We have what I would consider a light agenda, and I look forward to getting through the remainder this evening. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. And I just want to be clear, my response to Mr. Kukoviak is that, as he knows, typically we don't have those discussions for first reading on ordinance, because there is a hearing that's open for second reading, but it's totally up to the council as a whole. And we have had in the past had those discussions in advance. So I don't want it to be misinterpreted that I said that we would not. The process is, as he knows well, to do it during second reading, but we have had those discussions during first reading, and certainly look forward to having those discussions with you all at that time. Madam Clerk, please.
Yes. Okay, we're going to review the consent agenda. Approval of minutes of previous meeting, public meeting minutes of September 28th, 2021.
Consent.
Report of township officers, none. Reading of petitions and communications and bids, none. Bills. Are there any questions on the bills?
Consent.
Consent.
Okay, resolutions this evening. We are going to, with a request from the administration, withdraw Resolution 262-21 from the agenda this evening.
Okay.
With that said, Council President, are any resolutions being pulled this evening?
I do not have any resolutions being pulled. Do any of my council colleagues have any resolutions they'd like to pull or have questions on?
Have questions, but not.
Councilman Kukor, I'm sorry. Councilman Rutherford, I saw your hand, and then Councilwoman Castellino, I heard you too. So Councilman Rutherford.
I had no idea I looked so much like Joe.
You don't. You absolutely don't.
This is like the third meeting. All right, so I don't want to pull it to vote no. I do want to pull it to discuss 264-21.
264-21. Okay, we can do that. Okay. Anything else? Councilman Rutherford?
That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilwoman Castellino. I heard you.
Oh, no, that's it for me on first reading. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so 263, just had a question for Mr. Lepore.
Sure. Mr. Lepore?
You know, I appreciate his write-ups, and again, I always go crazy with change orders because I get we add on when they're there, but I mean, sometimes we don't have that street included.
Well, in
At a
this
time.
case, yeah. The list that we're working off was prepared 2 years ago. At that point, our evaluation of Skyline Drive was not included in our program. Now, here we are 2 years later, after 2 winters. We're requesting funding to proceed with that street. And then that closes out that little section where those 3 streets are all interconnected. So what we're doing is we're extending quantities. So we're not paying any more than we are for any other street in town. We're just adding additional quantities at the prices bid. And again, that'll finish up this 3-street neighborhood and probably make it a lot cleaner and simpler to do if we do it now all at once.
And I appreciate that and understood the explanation, but you know, you just put us in, it gets us in a situation, I know it was from 2 years ago, that, you know, when all the streets are included in the original bid, that, you know, again, now we're adding on where, you know, we didn't do it originally. So I just don't, it's an uncomfortable situation sometimes. I'm going to support it tonight because it's wiser and probably much less expensive to get it done now as opposed to, and you can't rebid the whole thing. But again, I mean, that I know those streets, like, how come they weren't included originally? So I'm just.
I understand. And lots of times now what we're trying to do is make sure we include as many streets we can in a neighborhood. But sometimes there's also financial limitations too. And
No, and I understand that, but then all of a sudden 2 years later, we see we can move forward and get it done. I just want to make sure the bidding process is fair and equitable.
Understood.
That's all. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you, Councilwoman Castellino. Any other questions?
No, but I'm glad Councilman Rutherford took pull 264. I did have a question on that too.
Okay, so we can discuss that since Councilman did not pull it to vote against it, but wanted to discuss it. So, Madam Clerk, is it okay if we just have that discussion and then vote on the consent agenda?
Well, I actually have it pulled from the consent agenda.
Okay. So let's go ahead and vote on the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is implemented. Resolution 264-21, resolution authorizing the Township of West Orange to issue one or more series of non-recourse redevelopment area bonds in an aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $4.5 million to fund a portion of the project costs related to the Essex Green Executive Drive redevelopment project. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, Clerk. I'd like, for the benefit of the public, to have the $4.5 million, what it is going to be spent on, discussed briefly if possible. Can somebody do it, or should we rely on my lay interpretation? Mr. Gross? Or...
We can do either if you'd like to, if you want to.
No, I prefer you, Mr. Gross. Thank you very much.
Okay. The $4.5 million is a bond that is going to be sold, or that we're going to sell the bond to the developers. The developers are going to invest an additional $4.5 million into the project on the basis of being repaid over a period of time from a portion of the pilot payments. The $4.5 million is basically $3 million that is going to go to to infrastructure in and around the site, improvements into the infrastructure system that will support the project itself. And then there's $1.5 million that will be coming to the township for the library. So this is money that directly impacts the township in a positive manner and will be utilized to finish our fit out at 10 Rooney.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. And this is a non-recourse. I mean, there's no, like, if this does not get paid by the portion of the pilot payments that is designated for it or allocated toward it, there is no way that it would come back on the township to repay that. Is that correct?
Yes, it will never be a source of debt service to the township.
Okay. All right. I wanted to clarify that because I am going to vote for it and I am against the executive drive development, but I think people have a hard time understanding that. And I just wanted to explain why. We have to govern. We have some ideas and approaches to doing things in town that sometimes differ. And I'm not supportive of 400 units of housing. However, this is not something that I don't support because we don't have to repay it and we get the infrastructure and the benefit of the money, even if the development for some crazy unforeseen reason were not to go through, we would still get the benefit of what this $4.5 million is going to do. And so in governing, you fight it out. If you win, you win. If you lose, you lose. And then you have to figure out your way forward. I'm not going to vote no on things just to vote no, especially if it's a situation like this. So that's why I wanted it clarified and discussed. Thank you very much, Town Clerk and Council President, Mr. Gross.
Thank you, Councilman Rutherford. I certainly appreciate that insight. And I think that clarifying that for the public is always a good position. It's not easy what we do to make the choices that we make, but well thought of. And you certainly did fight against it. It was a good fight, but here we are. We have to move forward and govern. So thank you so much. Councilwoman Castellino.
Thank you, Council President. So my question, you may want to kick me to pending matters, but it does it is in regards to this project. Once we approve this tonight, I wanted to know from Mr. Groves where we are in the process moving forward. I think we have to go back to getting some updates on these redevelopment projects. So could we, we haven't talked about this project in a while now. Something is happening. So if you don't mind, Council President, I just like to hear where we're at, a timeline for 10 Rooney, or anything in that area. I just like to get a quick rundown.
I think
So
it's great. Thank you.
If I may, Council President, I'll start and then Mr. Gross can do cleanup. It's an excellent question and it's the appropriate time. So all the final approvals are in place for the entirety of the project. And specifically, we have been having weekly conference calls, and it is expected or anticipated that the closing will occur late October or the very first week in November. That will mean that at the closing, West Orange will acquire title to 10 Rooney Circle. Anthony Iavino, who I think has been on at least one council meeting, is the architect who is retained by the library and who we've been working with. He is drawing up the final plans for the new library at 10 Rooney. And they will go out to bid, which will probably be a 60-day process for contractors to submit their proposals. So the bottom line is, the goal is, the likelihood is, and even if we happen to have a difficult winter, as you know, most of the library work will be done interior. So the goal is to start the library definitely in the spring, and it's anticipated to be a 9-month build out, so that hopefully by December of next year, the process for the library to move will occur. So simultaneous with the closing, that means that work will start on the 2-acre dog park that we're tremendously excited about. And the work will start with regard to the 425 units, which include 64, 65 low and moderate income units within that project. So those are that's where we're at vis-a-vis Executive Drive. And that will fold into, importantly, the redevelopment of the current library site, which cannot obviously begin, although we've won the 9% tax credits, we can't begin work and won't begin work on the current library site until after the new library has been moved into. So I'll answer any questions, or Ms. Rose can. We are also working on the transition, which is somewhat complicated because when we acquire title to 10 Rooney, we do have a tenant, and we anticipate obviously having an excellent relationship with that tenant, which is also important for the financial aspects of the town.
Go ahead, Councilwoman. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Trank. So you answered my one question about the tenant. My other question is, so with the 2 buildings, so 300 separate, that's fully operating. 100 and 200, are they? I assume there's plans to implode those buildings and to
Yes, I don't know if
what kind of time, or whatever they do to them. What are they?
Yeah, no, definitely they'll be removed. I believe I don't know the timing. There's not been a demo permit that's been pulled yet, but I believe that work is anticipated will happen in the 4th quarter because clearly the goal, we have been very, very careful to make sure that the library work and the dog park work and the infrastructure work all occurs kind of in sync so that we not have some of the situations that we had in the past where, they build their apartment building and then we're, kind of running alongside. So again, there's a very strong relationship with a lot of back and forth and logistics, but we anticipate that those 100 and 200 Executive Drive will be demoed this year. They got their final sewer permits and everything is a green light. And I anticipate that means they want to start construction on the 425 units in the spring also.
And I assume there's going to be communication with Essex Green itself, because obviously they're going through their construction right now. And in regards to coordinating or signage for patrons of the shopping mall, I guess all that will be taken care of. It'll be coordinated.
Again, part of our negotiations with Clarion is that there, as part of the construction, there'll be signage to help people find a new library specifically, which is important, obviously, for our residents of the town, because while most people know where the ShopRite is, they may not well know where 10 Rooney is, which is obviously right behind it. So yeah, that's all going to come together. And yes, there's a lot of logistics, a lot of construction crews.
Yeah.
And again, Mr. Tracy and Mr. Lepore are, ground zero on those aspects.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. I just wanted an update. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you for those questions, Councilwoman Castellino. And Mr. Trank, before I forget, you just triggered something that I was thinking about and always forget to bring up. When you said Mr. Iovino is drawing out new plans for the library for bidding, if you could put a bug in his ear and just ask or inquire as to any special needs section, a library for special needs, young people, young adults, if that could be incorporated. I don't know what those costs are, obviously, but, I think that particularly since our school district does well with our age 21 adults, just to have something else in the community would be wonderful to incorporate into the new library, which I am really very excited about.
Yeah, and the library board and the foundation,
Yeah.
specifically the president, Ms. Midland, have been phenomenal. Mr. Cubey is working 24/7. So I have a sense they're probably listening, and we'll follow up directly with you, but I'll definitely.
I always have that in the back of my head, and here we are at the part of where we're actually drawing up plans. So I'm very excited for all of the possibilities, the new library and the services for the township, but also the revenue that it will generate for the township, but as well for making Essex Green that much more viable. So I'm looking forward to all of the benefits that this redevelopment project brings to our community. And thank you for all the work that you've put in with the administration. And Mr. Gross, I know it has not been easy.
And obviously, everybody in town asked the same question, so we might as well say it publicly. Everyone's aware that there is a Starbucks coming. Yeah, the library community is excited, and I know the overall community. And you can see that pad, and the glass is in, and it looks like there's certainly have a game plan to get it open in November. So there is a Starbucks coming. I believe there is a Five Guys coming to Essex Green, and I believe a Burlington Coat Factory. So there's a lot of huge improvements going on there, including a brand new facade that everyone can see when they're driving by.
I am excited that it has a drive-through. I know that there's some in the community that do not like the idea of a drive-through, but on my way to work, that is going to be very convenient as I jump right onto 280 going down to Trenton. So I'm looking forward to that. And I saw the glass in the other day when I was there. So it looks like they'll be up and running soon. Very excited.
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney, I see your hand up.
Thank you so much. And I just really wanted to thank Mr. Trank for the update on the plan and how much I appreciate Councilman Rutherford's comment, because though he did not approve the plan, to recognize that it is a benefit to the township, because all that 3.5 million that we just discussed will go toward utilities, roadways, pathways, sidewalks, public right-of-ways, and even talking about Essex Green, the plan was to integrate the two projects. So there is definitely a benefit to the town. So appreciate that. The question I had was on page 3, section 2. Just to clarify, where the sentence reads, the bond shall be special limited obligation to the township payable solely out of the pledged annual service charge. So John, does that go back to the percentage that will be appropriated within the pilot?
Yes, that is
that's
back
the
to where
same.
I had mentioned that there was a certain portion of the pilot that will pay
Yes.
this off. That's the pledged portion, and
Right.
the rest of the pilot will not. So, if that is done because you can't necessarily predict the success of a project, and in order to make it a non-recourse, if for some reason the project has a limited or no success, you need to break down the pilot payment of that. So how much of it is actually going to go towards
Mhm. Thank you.
this project?
And to clarify, on page 4 in section 6, I had this notation here. Let's see, it's kind of mid-paragraph there. The authorized officers are hereby authorized. Let me see. I guess it's the sentence that says, so long as the purchasers sign a certificate to the effect at a minimum that it has reviewed all the documents and determined shall be necessary, desirable, or convenient in order for it to make an informed decision. Let's.
I think this is
Oh,
pretty
sorry,
much
is that-
standard bond law. I mean, in terms of when there are disclosures that are necessary between the parties, and the parties have to acknowledge that they've read the disclosures and they understand what they're doing. So I think that's pretty common language, or the type of language that you find in most bonds.
I think I probably circled that as I was reading it and got to the end and answered my own question. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCartney. Councilman Rutherford, I see you.
Thank you, Council President. With regard to the pledged and unpledged portion of the pilot, which gets paid first, or is there an order in which they get paid? Can you speak to that, Mr. Gross?
The pledged portion is the first portion, but by definition, it's limited. So it is done in such a manner that it limits it does not necessarily pay. It does not pay off the entire bond. So if the project is not successful, the bond buyers take the haircut on that, if you will, which is appropriate since they are the developers as well. So they have a vested interest to make sure that the project continues to be successful over time.
Do we know what portion of the repayment amount is covered by the pledged portion of the pilot?
We know it. It's in the actual agreement itself. I don't have it in front of me tonight, but I certainly can get that for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this resolution that was pulled? I don't see any hands up. Madam Clerk.
Is there a motion to approve 264-21?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Council President Matute Brown?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinances on second and final reading, 2658-21. An ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 14.5 and establishing Chapter 2, Section 14.9 of the revised general ordinances of West Orange, appointment of police department officers and personnel. Is there a motion to introduce on second and final reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I don't want to second it. I wanted to interject before we actually put that up. Council President, can we table this and have a little bit more time for further discussion?
I have the chief is here, so I want to introduce it so that he can, he wasn't here when it was introduced on first reading, so I'd like to give him the benefit of expressing his perspective on this. But go ahead and finish what you were saying. You wanted to table it to have further discussion amongst the council, or?
Yes, because there are a couple of issues. So one, I am fully supportive of the alternative route. I think it is going to be good for us here in West Orange. I recognize that the anti-nepotism language in this ordinance may pose some challenges with regard to scheduling. I'm not as concerned about that as I am concerned about having an anti-nepotism policy townwide. I recognize that we are starting with the police because we are going through the alternative route. We're trying to go through the alternative route to increase our numbers of minority and women officers. However, I do think it's important that we look at the entire town and understand how these things will impact us townwide, and not, especially since there are no hires that are pending right now that need this to go through, at least as far as I'm aware. I think we should take a little bit more time and take a more thoughtful approach to how we can do this townwide and not just with the police. And I do believe some of my council colleagues have other issues with regard to that as well.
So certainly I'm supportive, as we discussed the last meeting, with respect to a townwide nepotism policy, or anti-nepotism policy, so that it is, well, I just think it's just good practice. And certainly don't want our law enforcement officers to feel targeted by it, and do understand the concerns, but I still do want to at least introduce it so that the chief can speak to it, and then we can ask questions and talk about next steps. Councilwoman Castellino, I do see your hand up, and I know, Madam Clerk, that there is a motion on the floor.
So, so there was a motion on the floor. So just for procedural clarification, because I had some questions that I wanted to, do a little more time digging in on this, and I didn't get that chance. I know the chief is here anyway. However, if we introduce it, can we still table it if we're not right? We can still table it if we're not satisfied.
Yes, yeah, we've done that before. Yes.
Right, so I'll be comfortable introducing it as long as we could still table it.
Yeah.
After discussion.
Yeah, and if come the next meeting, we're still not ready, we can still, continue to relist it. So absolutely.
Okay, then I'll second to listen, but I
Tentative.
Tentative.
Okay,
Wonderful.
I have to do a roll call. Councilwoman Castellino,
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney,
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford,
Nope.
Councilwoman Williams,
You're muted, Councilwoman.
Yes.
Council President Matute Brown.
Yes. So since we are, I'm going to ask the chief to please speak on it first, since it is introduced on second reading. Chief Abbott.
Thank you, Council President. So this is an ordinance that the state chiefs organization has lobbied for intensely to allow us to increase our representation among minorities, ethnic minorities, racial minorities, gender minorities, those who are the lesser represented in policing in general. Excuse me. With civil service, you're kind of at the mercy of however that list comes out, and we don't even get to see who's on that list until we call for a certification. So this allows us to increase these groups just as the non-civil service organizations have the ability to do. There's also a tremendous cost-saving feature in that these officers will train themselves at their own expense, rather, in these police academies. And when they graduate, we can hire them by the interview process, et cetera. I don't think anybody on the panel tonight would disagree with the implementation of an anti-nepotism policy townwide. What I would suggest is that you pass this ordinance if you're so inclined, and then once you establish an anti-nepotism ordinance, you revisit this ordinance, cull the section out that has the anti-nepotism policy in it, and refer to the ordinance with the new anti-nepotism policy.
Council colleagues, the floor is yours if you have any questions you want to pose to the chief. Council discussions. I see Councilwoman Castellino's hand is up.
Yeah, so on page 3, the ordinance, chief, hire, promotion, supervision of officer. There's a lot going on there. I understand my colleague to go town-wide. I just have to break this down. I mean, right now, I don't feel is the time or place. I just think it's, I mean, we look at families that go into law enforcement, the fire department. A lot of it is, you know, a parent to a child following the footsteps. You know, family members. You know, we all saw that on 9/11 when we lost our first responders. It was many families suffering. I don't know. I need more time on this nepotism part of it.
Okay, it's understandable. I mean, that goes to the heart of what nepotism
Yeah,
is.
no,
So,
I get that.
as far as the hiring, it's only going to, as I understand it, in dealing with the legal department when they drafted that section, because that was a requirement by the state to have that. As I understand it, it only pertains to hiring alternate route candidates. If somebody's son or daughter were to be hired off the list and
Okay.
their father was in the police department or fire department, it wouldn't apply. Now, if you do a townwide policy, that's at your discretion how you want to have that codified.
Yeah, you have half brother, half sister, first cousin. Yeah, I get nepotism and whatnot, and it should only go so far. But the same token, I don't know. I have to run different scenarios, so I don't think I'm ready yet. I prefer to table this tonight.
I wonder, Councilwoman Castellino, because I did have this discussion with the chief earlier, and Mr. Gross, I do see you, and my council colleagues, I see your hands as well that are up. But my conversation with the chief was with respect to also, is this retroactive? So will it impact our current members? And because I would not want to be in a position where we change the working conditions, right, of our police department, meaning that if they are used to or have childcare, for instance, set up already for their shifts. Now, if there is a husband and wife who are working the same shift, I don't know how often that happens. You know, would that impact them? And yes, it will, but neither do I think that a family member should supervise another family member. I also think that in that situation, it probably poses more danger to a situation where, let's say, I can just imagine, you know, if there is a perpetrator, let's just say, who is assaulting an officer, and that, you know, that officer supervisor who happens to be husband or wife or is there, then things might get a little bit more emotional than they would under a circumstance or scenario with a partner. Not that a partner is any less valuable to one, but I think that the emotions would go into when I considered that, you know, I was more acceptable to the nepotism policy in that regard, but certainly understand your concern.
Can
Sure.
So there's really three sections, A, B, and C. And it gets a little convoluted when you start reading all the different relationships that are possible. So basically, if you just look at A, it says no family member. Let's just say that includes everything. Shall be eligible for appointment to the police department. Now that's under the alternate route program. So that means I want to get my daughter a job. I can't do that. This ordinance precludes that. It does not apply to family members who are presently members of the police department. So nobody has to be fired because their cousin's on the job. So then if you go to the second section, B, no members of the police department shall participate in any procedures related to the promotion, performance evaluation, or discipline of a family member. We wouldn't allow that now anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Then if you go to C, no member of the police department shall supervise or have supervisory authority over a family member, except in cases of emergency, which is what we do now as well. We don't have any direct supervision where there's a husband, wife, or brothers or anything like that. It may come now where it could happen and, if somebody gets promoted and they have a brother here, but we'll have to take steps to separate them, which is a best practice anyway. I would intend to do that regardless. And if it has happened in the past, it just really flew under the radar, but it's not a good thing to have in place. You don't want, let's just use the example of brothers. You don't want a brother responsible for the leadership, direction, control, discipline over a sibling. It's just not a good practice.
No.
So it's really a lot simpler than it seems. It's just that when you start reading all the different relationships, it's hard to wrap your mind around.
Well, yes, that's been my issue with this.
Right. So it doesn't really apply to anybody now. And it's really just about the alternate route program. And we're not going to hire anybody's brother, cousin, aunt, uncle, whatever you want to call it. And we're not going to have people supervising their aunt, uncle, brother, cousin, or participating in their disciplinary matters or evaluations, et cetera, which again, you just as a matter of good management, you don't allow that. I think it's a lot when you cut through all the different possibilities of who's related to who. I think it's a lot easier to understand, like reading the first sentence and the last sentence is really all you kind of need to do to absorb it.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to go to Mr. Gross.
Thank you, Council President. Just to follow up on the Chief's comments, I would just want to be clear that we currently have policies in place
Yes.
officially that deal with much of this, and they are townwide, and two in particular. First off, we have our classic conflict of interest rules. I mean, we can't have one employee who might be related to another employee, and it's a pretty long list. It goes down to grandparents, and it can't make decisions that would provide an economic or an advantage to someone within their family, whether they be employees or not employees. But more to the point, we have a policy, and it's really not long. It's short and it's pretty clear. It's a supervision of relative policy, and it is the policy of the Township of West Orange that no employee should be in a position that provides supervision over another member of the same immediate family unless absolutely necessary. Now, it's obviously much simpler terminology and not as detailed, I guess, in the scenarios, but to the extent that it's clear, you don't have relatives supervising other relatives, and I suspect that the unless absolutely necessary has to do with those rare times when it's all hands on deck, and perhaps by virtue of just necessity, people end up working together. So this is not. I bring this up not because to say that we don't need the other policy, but just to point out that while we're talking about this, we should make sure the public understands that we already have policies to deal with, and that those policies are in place and have been in place, and our day-to-day management has been acting accordingly. This action is a clarification and a requirement that comes with the alternate route, and certainly gives more teeth and detail to the policies, but they're not drastically different than what we're doing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Council President. So thank you, Chief, for clarifying the parts in the ordinance where it wasn't clear for me. So understanding that it only impacts those who are coming through the alternate route program certainly clarifies a tremendous amount, because I was concerned as well as how it would impact officers that are already hired. My concern, however, and thanks again also to Mr. Gross for identifying and clarifying that we have something similar townwide already in place. I think the challenge for me is that this particular resolution, speaks separately to nepotism, anti-nepotism, and we don't have that language in any other ordinances that I'm aware of, and perhaps we do, and that can be clarified. But that's my only concern. And so the only other thing is just clarifying that this is no impact on existing officers and only new hires would be helpful as well.
So Councilwoman Williams, I haven't seen, and that doesn't mean anything because I'm only 3 years new to the council, but I haven't seen this language on other hiring ordinances, but also this is a new alternate route program that civil service communities can access. So I hear you, and I'll leave that to Mr. Gross and the chief to address. I will say that I do have one other concern. While I'm actually torn, Chief, I know that this is would save the township money because we are not going to be required to fund the police academy training. And that's where I am a little torn, because if we're looking at equity and being able to diversify the force, not necessarily to indicate that just people of color are those who are in the alternate route program, because I'm sure that that's not the case. But I wondered if we could discuss being a bit more equitable when it comes to those members that we are looking to diversify the force with. I know that that's not an answer that you probably have right now, but it's just something that, triggered something I thought about when I heard you say that it is. Now, mind you, of course I want to save us money. I think we all want to do that, but I also want to make sure we're doing it equitably, right? So that those that are taken from the civil service list, we fund that academy training. And I know that those that are in alternate route self-fund. It was just something that I'm a little concerned about, or torn between, actually. But I'll leave that there in the parking lot somewhere for us to discuss too, if you have any thoughts to share on that.
Okay.
So we probably won't pull from a civil service list any further once we can hire alternate route. And
okay.
The mayor can speak for himself, but the intent of this law was to allow for an increase in diversity. It was a hue and cry among police chiefs statewide that, I would have to meet with Tom per year periodically, and we'd go over our numbers, and he'd be a little bit disappointed in what our numbers were. And the same answer every time. It's like, I'm a prisoner of the civil service list. I can only hire who they send me. And Tom always understood that, but this was conversations he and I had years ago, and it's finally come to fruition. Is like, this is what's needed. If you really truly are committed to increasing diversity and representing the community you serve, you need to be able to hire people of color, not to wish for it and hope the list comes out that way, because that's probably not going to happen.
I appreciate that perspective.
This does that. It doesn't affect people who are already serving, other than, like I said, in the supervisory or disciplinary capacity, you don't want that anyway. There's an inherent conflict. It's
what happened.
Nepotism in hiring is one thing. The intent of this law, or having the anti-nepotism policy mandatorily in this ordinance, or at least that you have one in place, is so that elected officials and police chiefs can't hire their relatives. That's what that's all about. But as far as the supervision and management, like as Mr. Gross said, there's already rules for that in place. And I'm not going to tell you it's never happened in the police department. And one of the concerns when Mr. Moon drafted this was that will happen in policing. There's no question about it. A sibling gets held over on a job, and the sergeant's coming in on midnight is his boss. So we consider those emergent conditions, and that's when it will occur. But nobody should be scheduled to be a supervisor of a family member. That's just not a good practice.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, and I appreciate the clarification. So there will not be, Chief Abbott, there will not be police officers that would have to choose to take a different shift than they've been taking so far because of this policy. Am I hearing that correctly?
No, that could occur. I don't think there's anybody that's situated that way now, but by way of example, we have an active promotional list. So let's say one of the individuals on that list was promoted to sergeant. Right now, he and his brother are both patrol officers. It would not be a good idea to have them on the same shift, as an immediate supervisor. So we'll have to figure out how to navigate that and figure out who gets the first pick, who gets the second pick, whether it's rank as its privilege or you want to give it to the rank and file and the new sergeant doesn't get his pick, he gets the second pick. But one way or the other, I mean, that's kind of outside of this ordinance. It's really just something we're going to have to do regardless.
I'll just add that scenario is already prohibited within the policies we have in place. So,
and if it has occurred, if anybody's giving you examples of where it has occurred, that's fallen under my radar, and shame on me. It shouldn't happen.
well, or it could happen in an emergent circumstance. Again,
Well, yeah, but I mean, besides, just as a matter of routine scheduling, we don't want that scheduling to occur that way. I can't think of any examples where it does. We have two brothers who were sergeants. We have a husband and wife, but there's a rank separation. So there's different, there's different elements there where, I guess the way this is written, we're gonna have to really drill down where you start getting into cousins and things like that. But immediate family, brother-in-laws, there's probably times, if I think back where it's occurred and, we evolve, we try to always do better and we can always do better. So because that happened in the past doesn't mean we should, now that we're aware of it, we should continue to let it happen, whether this ordinance is in place or not.
and just to address the question about whether or not, whether we have a nepotism policy, there is no policy within our rules and regulations called it and named nepotism. The word nepotism does not occur anywhere in our policies. That's probably a function of just how long our policies go back. We have a policy that's called supervision of relatives. Now that is a nepotism, anti-nepotism policy that we have, but it's just not named that. So again, I just want to reiterate, particularly for the benefit of the public, the general public, we are operating within the scope and intent of these rules already. That is not to say that we don't have relatives working in different departments and in different circumstances. We do, but they're not supervising each other, and they are not in any type of a conflict circumstance. So we certainly by policy they should not be. So.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. Councilwoman McCartney.
Thank you. I think what first comes to mind is that we all hesitated when this came up from second reading because I think we were looking forward to having this discussion on first reading. And it just stresses the point that there are certain ordinances that we do need to discuss on first reading. So now I do appreciate the chief answering these questions now as we come up for second reading.
I think I'm sorry to interrupt, but the chief wasn't available during the first reading.
I understand. I'm just saying, it stresses the point that, we did have all of these questions, clarification. I don't know that we're going to table it right now because I think the chief has just done an excellent job showing this proactive approach that our police department is taking. One of the questions I do have is that for the chief, are there candidates now that are on a list that have already gone through the training at the academy, and how will this ordinance affect them? And how, as far as hiring practices, what's what determines who gets hired?
I'm not sure I'm following you. So right now, we have probably at least 3 in the pipeline to be hired that are coming off the civil service list.
Mhm.
There are, some of them are related to other members of the police department, but that's strictly by coincidence. They came off the civil service list in the order based upon which they scored on the test. So this doesn't really apply to them. Doesn't
Okay.
apply to them, not really. It just doesn't apply to them. It's more if and when we hire from the alternate route program. We just haven't done that yet. There's nobody in our pipeline. We're not contemplating hiring anybody from the alternate route list because we don't have the ordinance in place.
So does that mean that we will not have individuals that will go through police academy anymore, or they can choose to do that? Also, this is one or the other?
Well, down at the Police Training Commission, some of you may know I hold a seat on the State Police Training Commission, and we just expanded the ability for police academies to have up to half their class alternate route. We all kind of expected at some point there's probably going to be full alternate route classes because the non-civil service towns, for the most part, by and large, hire, some do test and hire that way, but most of them just hire alternate route candidates. All the civil service communities are probably going to go the same way. And at that point, people will, there probably won't be much call for civil service lists. There may be in larger communities of color. I shouldn't say that there won't be a need, because I would say that in the urban centers, they're still probably going to hire their residents because they have the ability to reflect their population, whereas it's a struggle for your more suburban type communities like West Orange. So it's a great struggle. So I think in communities like West Orange, you're going to see strictly alternate route. In your urban centers, you're going to see more, in your cities, you're going to see more hiring off the civil service list because it serves the purpose. Now, there's also talk at the state level to start putting money out to supplement people who want to go to the academy at their own expense. It's not a great deal of tuition, but $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 to somebody that doesn't have that is a great deal of money. So there's a lot of talk about putting money forward for people to get tuition to do this, scholarships, things like that. And I think you're going to see that come to be as well, because as I said, the intent here, and it's not a secret, it's in the governor's letter, I believe, is to hire minorities. So if it's not serving the purpose, it's going to drive everybody right back to the drawing board to say, well, how do we get minority representation in the alternate route classes? If it's because of the tuition, and there's going to be assistance.
And civil service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Castellino.
So basically what you're saying is no one should go take the test anymore. You're just going to hire alternate route. Is that what you're basically just said?
It's not my call. That's a decision the mayor makes. I'm not the appointing authority.
Okay, so here's where I
I'm saying
disagree.
if we want to increase our diversity, we're going to probably hire alternate route and hire females, minorities, et cetera.
Okay. And if we were another town, I would agree with you, but we have a large diversified population in the township, and I've said this numerous times, we need to have better recruitment with both our police and fire department up at West Orange High School. We have career nights where the colleges come in. We could be having a table there. I could be on the phone on this.
We've done it. We're one of 12, unless it's expanded, we're one of 12 nationally accredited police departments in New Jersey. I also send officers to all the colleges for this purpose. And we do it at the high school. We have a school resource officer there full time. What's better recruitment than that?
All right. I just want to, I think what I'm hearing is you're sending a message so people don't even bother taking the test. Now, if that's what the message is, I think you need to be clear about that.
Well, I think if we can reach the numbers where we have a balance between the police department and the community we serve, where we have a true reflection, a one-on-one demographic, then I think at that point, we might want to return to a list, but, to just go to the civil service list and, by way of example, I just said we have 3 people in the pipeline to be hired. Well, all 3 are white males.
Okay, but isn't the
It's a
civil
matter of
service,
commitment from the governing body of what they want to do, to be honest with you. If we want to reflect our community, these are the steps we need to take. If we want to just say potluck and, it's not my fault you didn't come out on the test, or I didn't take the test for you, I mean, we could do that too. It's a matter of what we want to do, how committed we are to it.
so I want to increase, I'm not saying I don't want to, but aren't there protections for officers if they go through civil service versus alternate route?
I mean, listen, if the mayor decides he wants to hire one off a list and one alternate route, you can do that too.
My
We
understanding,
could also increase the diversity pool by having kids take, like mentoring them to go take the test, and then they would be granted also those, I don't want to call their protections that civil service offers them.
I believe, I don't believe that anyone that comes in through the alternate route is denied any civil service protections.
No, absolutely not.
They
Okay,
get
that's what I'm trying to,
same
I just
protection.
don't want to mislead people if you don't take,
The alternate route is simply a different pool of applicants. That's really the only difference, and how they get to be different, and the makeup of the pool in terms of how they got on the list. One is through taking a test, and the other is, for lack of a better term, free market, free agency, where somebody can go get the education that's necessary and come in and to come into the system without going through the test process. After that, it's all the same.
but they won't be less
They are-
protected as if they went the other with the civil service route.
They
No
won't-
different.
No, the protection will be the same. I mean,
Universal, yeah.
I just don't want to mislead anybody that is looking to go alternative route if they could do well and take the test, take the
Well,
test.
again, once you get hired, everybody it's still a civil service job, and everybody's going to have the same civil service protections.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't discharge an alternate route applicant any faster, easier, quicker than we could discharge somebody who came off the list. We can't promote them any differently. They held the same exact civil service title, symbol, of police officer. Everything's exactly the same. It's just as Mr. Gross said, it's just a different pool of applicants. It's a different vehicle to hire, and the intent, which is right in the law, if you read it, the intent is to increase minority representation.
And then my last question was, I know this may be minor, in regards to like all the listings here with the different scenarios of the hirings. Obviously, B and C, I get all that. I know we have policies on the book, but in A with hiring, you may have someone who has, it's his first cousin. And I appreciate what you said, Chief, about other chiefs hiring all the relatives. But once if you have a situation where sometimes you have a relative, which you could, I know first cousins that don't even know their first cousins, or families don't talk, and somebody's looking to get a job here, that person wouldn't be able to.
Well, it would be, yeah, again, there's 3 sections in this ordinance, so you have to look at the one that pertains to hiring. I think that was A,
I said that.
right. So the mayor's the appointing authority. In other words, he wouldn't be able to appoint somebody that, in my view, I mean, Richard can chime in if he feels differently, but he couldn't appoint somebody that he had a conflict with, or he could probably extend that to the council, that type of thing. It doesn't mean that, I don't think it means that if this appointee had a first cousin on the job, that it would preclude him from being retained.
Well, that's what it says here, first cousin.
Yeah, but it's.
That's what I'm saying. It's so detailed that's why trying to run all the scenarios by you to make sure that all the scenarios should be in here. That's all.
Okay. Councilwoman Castellino, I just wanted to call on Councilwoman Williams next. If
Sure.
you're-
Yeah, now I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Council President. Just wanted to ask procedurally if we table that specific language, can we still move forward with the remainder of the ordinance? If we strike and remove, do we have to go back to first reading? So this is more of a procedural question. Since we're on second reading here, can we table? So I have two questions procedurally. One, can we strike and approve? Or do we have to go back to first reading on the revision? Or can we, I guess, amend, which would still be removing the language, it's just a different terminology, and still approve, so that we can have an actual impact analysis and have real hard evidence instead of speculative analysis on how this would ultimately impact the department as it stands today?
Okay. This has no impact on the department as it stands today. What the point Councilwoman Castellino had was about Section A. So nobody could be appointed under the alternate route program that fits in one of those categories. I think that sums it up. Could still come off a civil service list, but they could not be appointed. The mayor could not appoint them if they fit in one of those categories.
So that means if they are
I'm sorry.
half brother. I mean, just to be clear, like the relationship is established to the mayor or to other officers?
Anybody in the West Orange Police Department. So we have an officer named John Doe, and he has a first cousin. The mayor cannot appoint him under the alternate route program.
Under the alternate route program. I want to jump in. I'm sorry, council colleagues, and Mr. Kaiser, I know your hands have been up for some time. I certainly want you to respond to Councilwoman Williams' questions as well as your perspective.
Right, and Councilman Williams raised the issue that I wanted to talk about. That's why I had raised my hand, because you all have to remember, this is on second reading. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make a material amendment and query what's material, what's not, that can be a difficult question. The only safe way to deal with it is if you're going to make an amendment that's significant in any respect, it's just to start over again. And it has to go back to first reading, advertising, and so forth. And I've been trying to gauge, how important this is in terms of speed, and it's been hard to do. It's obvious to me that the chief would like to proceed quickly and get this into play. And, to the extent that's the case, do you want to make perfection the enemy of the good? I mean, this is going to accomplish something that he wants to accomplish, that the administration wants to accomplish. If you postpone it, if you table it and then make material change, you're going to have to start all over again 2 weeks from now or whenever you decide to table it to. It could take a significant amount of time before you can get this kind of legislation on the books. So that's the trade-offs here. And I just want to make sure that you're all sensitive to it. We can, as always, make changes to our ordinances in a fairly quick period of time, but anytime. So you're not locking yourself in with anything here, I don't think. I just want to make those points.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Councilman Rutherford.
Thank you, Council President. My only concern, if we approve this tonight, is that it takes quite a bit of time to then readdress it townwide. And I wouldn't want to do that, especially since I don't want it to seem like we're targeting one part of town governance and not the others.
So to that point, Councilman Rutherford, I think that two things. What Mr. Gross expressed earlier about having the no employee can supervise family. I know that's not a whole policy in itself, but he also said there was a supervision of family policy that's not called a nepotism policy. We can certainly revisit those to incorporate them just the way we did when it was we had police directives that we felt should be ordinances, and we did that. I'm looking at it, and as I'm hearing this conversation, I'm hearing it that we can possibly do that as well if we have enough support from the council. I know I am supportive of it. If we have 3 votes to do that, then certainly want to look at that. I don't want to poll the council at this time, but I'm hearing that it is something that everyone has a concern about. So looking to address that, you know, if you want to reach out to the legal department and kind of spearhead that so that we have that on for first reading during the next one, that's completely up to you. We can all do that. I do want to say at this point that I am completely satisfied with the chief's explanation of the fact that it's not an all or nothing. A couple of things that I made note of when the chief was talking, first and foremost, was that the state chiefs have lobbied for this for some time. Secondly, just as a reminder, or for those members of the public that may not be aware, West Orange was involved in a litigation, and Councilman Rutherford, you and I have discussed this because I believe your father was state chairman at the time of NAACP. However many years ago, I want to say almost 20 years ago, we were sued by the NAACP because we don't have the representation that we should.
Way longer than that.
Much longer than that.
Much longer than that. Yeah, back in the the early 90s, maybe.
Yes. And I also want to, stay vigilant on the fact that we have committed to becoming more racially inclusive communities. And that intent requires us to make some decisions that are not always going to be favorable across the board. I can commit to you that I am supportive of both this ordinance to help diversify our police department. The chief also just stated that the civil service class is already half alternate route. I was not aware of that, so I appreciate that input. And looking into the future, he says he believes that at some point it will be all alternate route. And I would have a hard time believing that municipalities would not look to support that when they can save a tremendous amount of money, not having to pay for recruitment classes. Having said that, I am supportive of this, and I do, Councilman Rutherford, commit that I am supportive of a townwide nepotism policy in post haste, because I don't want our police officers to feel that they're being targeted. And I also don't want them to feel targeted because this is not coming directly from us. This is state statute now. All working towards a justice-centered form of government, right? That's what we're one of the reasons that I ran. And I think that we need to focus on that. That's my perspective. At this time, I think that we have exhausted the conversation, and I am going to ask for Madam Clerk to move the motion. I will move the motion to adopt this ordinance.
Well, this is on second and final reading, so we have to give the public a chance.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We got so engaged in this conversation, I completely forgot. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter? If so, please raise your hand. You can use the raise your hand function. Madam Moderator, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on this ordinance?
They're not raising their hands yet.
Okay, haven't seen none. Madam Clerk.
Okay, is there a motion to approve 2658-21?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Susan?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilwoman Castellino?
You're muted, Councilwoman. You're on mute, Councilwoman.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Where I am supportive of diversifying the workforce, some of the language in here I'm not supportive of, so I will be a no this evening.
Councilwoman McCartney?
I'm voting yes. I think this is a proactive approach that we have been looking for.
Councilman Rutherford?
Sorry, no.
Councilwoman Williams?
So this is one of those tough decisions because coming into this, I did have some reservations and I sought for us to delay this, but with the explanation from the chief, understanding that this will not impact anyone and that the town already has a policy in place, I am going to vote yes.
Council President Matute Brown?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you to all for that very robust discussion. I certainly appreciate when we can engage into our administration for all their support in helping us find our way through these very challenging decisions. Thank you.
Ordinances on first reading, 2661-21, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by the Township of West Orange, appropriating $15,236,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $14,510,000 bonds or notes of the township to finance the finance part of the cost thereof. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Council President Matute Brown?
Yes. And I see Councilwoman Castellino has her hand up first.
So I didn't get a chance to ask you or give you a call today, Council President. I'm going to assume that we will have a presentation from Mr. Gross and Mr. Lepore at the next reading of this ordinance for all the descriptive details.
Mr. Gross?
I absolutely anticipate that, yes.
Okay, we have our, pictures of before what was actually accomplished this past year, a list of that and what we're looking to do with this bond this coming year.
Understood.
Great, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. I know it's a lot of work, but I appreciate it. I think
And since you have your marching orders.
Well, we started this a couple of years ago, so I think it's
very
great for the
helpful.
public. Yeah, it's great
It's
for the
helpful for-
public to
yeah.
visualize.
Absolutely. Any of my other council colleagues have any questions or discussions they want to raise at this time with respect to this proposed appropriating $15,236,000 and authorizing the issuance of $14,510,000 in bonds.
Look forward to the presentation.
Okay, members of the public, this is first reading, so there is not a time available for you to ask questions. That will be done during second reading. And we will move on, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 2662-21, bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of various properties pursuant to the Downtown Redevelopment Plan, appropriating $7 million therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $7 million bonds or notes of the township to finance the cost thereof. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
So moved.
Second,
Councilwoman Castellino?
yes.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Council President Matute Brown?
Yes. I know some of my council colleagues wanted discussion on these ordinances on first reading. Do any of you have questions that you want to put forth at this time?
If the administration could just, give a brief overview for the public, I think it'd be helpful.
Mr. Gross?
Yeah, this is the ordinance. This is a $7 million ordinance. This is to fund acquisition of additional properties based on the downtown redevelopment. We're in the process of negotiating to procure those properties. And while we're not going, those negotiations obviously are ongoing and sensitive. We felt this was the time to go ahead and fund in the hopes that we will be in a position to conclude acquisitions by the end of the year. That's our hope. Certainly, if not, shortly thereafter. So.
I mean, those, I'm sorry, just for the members of the public, all of the information for the ordinance, including the schedule of the acquisition parcel schedule, are online, but I think that there are over 25 parcels, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
That's accurate.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
And just to restate what you stated earlier, so Mr. Gross, once we move forward and we approve this, you will update on the website the supplemental debt
statement.
Statements.
I understand the council's desire, and we will comply.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering, well, yeah, it'll just be updated with the $7 million, because I know that we're still in negotiations for the acquisition. So we don't really know how much we're going to spend of that $7 million. I'm hoping it's not all of it, but then at that point, if the supplemental debt statement is put up on the website at this time, well, when it's second reading, if it's approved on second reading, if there are any changes thereafter, then that same debt statement will be amended on the website, correct?
The way the system works is since an ordinance, any change in a second reading that would change the amount of money.
It goes back first.
That's brought all over. So then so your supplemental debt statement won't change. It'll either be adopted or it won't.
Okay. And because you're still in the process of negotiating, you did say that you were looking forward to having some resolution when? I know you can't set a timeline, but what's the goal?
Well, we want to be as resolved as quickly as possible, because we're very interested in moving the project forward. So we have a desire. We have it on now because we'd like to be in a position to be able to come to some conclusion by the end of the year or shortly thereafter. Having said that, this is negotiations, and as we all know, sometimes that can be very short, and sometimes it can take a long time. So we're moving forward, and in order to move forward, we need to be in a position to say with some certainty that we'll be able to fund acquisitions with the folks with which we're negotiating. So.
Understood. And I know that there were some questions of the public that were going to be answered during this time. If any of my council colleagues want to address them. I think one of the questions was with respect to, is this the balance, the appraisal to cover the balance of the acquisition?
Council President, I probably prefer, as much as we love to answer questions from the public, these are sensitive negotiations.
Understood.
We will be happy to disclose everything we possibly can once negotiations are completed, but we do not want to minimize our impact of being able to negotiate deals that the governing body would be advantage to both the governing body and hopefully the parties with which we're negotiating. But we don't want to negotiate against ourselves by disclosing publicly details prematurely. So.
Okay. Understood, and certainly appreciate that. Are there any other discussion points from my council colleagues? No, I'm seeing no. Madam Clerk?
Okay. 2663-21 bond ordinance providing for the remediation, demolition, and development of township-owned properties identified on the official tax map of the township and commonly known as Block 9, Lots 32 and 36, commonly referred to as 810 Central Avenue, respectively, pursuant to the Central Avenue Development Plan by and in the County of Essex, appropriating $500,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $500,000 bonds or notes of the township to finance the cost thereof. Is there a motion to introduce on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Councilwoman Castellino?
Yes.
Councilwoman McCartney?
Yes.
Councilman Rutherford?
Yes.
Councilwoman Williams?
Yes.
Council President Matute Brown?
Yes, and I see Councilwoman Castellino.
So,
It'd be great on Family Feud, right? Like,
I don't know about the answers though. So Mr. Gross or Mr. Trank, if we could just get a quick update of where we're at. Obviously, we're, at demolition state. If you could just give us a timeline on this project.
I'll defer to Mr. Trank on the timeline. I'll talk a little bit about this ordinance. I think, everyone knows that we've done an awful lot in this project to date, and we've done it without putting any of our own funds up.
Yeah.
All from the very beginning, or very little of our own money from the very beginning, and have always knew that we were going to come to a point where we would have to put up some funds. And this tonight recognizes that this is the time for which that we have outreach because of the projects of the progress of the projects. I'll defer to Mr. Trank on timelines. He's probably more knowledgeable of those than I am, but we're real pleased to be here because these projects now are coming to a more mature states. And that's really good for the project itself.
I don't see Mr. Trank on the line. I think he may have gotten off already.
I do apologize. As you know, certain aspects of the project of the entire project have been built, and now as we reach really towards the end with the Biddleman project part of the project. We're going to have to do a little more work on some of the cleaning up of the site than that's going to end up being portion. We're responsible for 20. We did get grants for 75% of the cleanup, and we're going to be responsible for 25%. This ordinance represents a portion of that, and we're looking to minimize our exposure on this, but we do need to have funds available, and that's why the ordinance is.
Council President, I wanted to chime in on that point that I feel that Gil Alpert needs to be commended for the demolition and development and the remediation that he has done all along Central Avenue corridor. On such a site that had been unsightly and abandoned for over 50 years on that side of the road. And he just should be commended for all the work that he's done there for the township.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilwoman McCartney. You have a lot more historical perspective than I do in that space, but in the 3 years that I have seen the work that Mr. Alpert and his group has done, certainly is to be commended for his commitment to the township, because I understand that he has been waiting for many years to proceed through so many different circumstances. So very excited that the corridor is getting the attention that it needs. We are getting the affordable housing along with the market rates. So I'm looking forward to cleaning up that area and making it look that much better. We already have one of the buildings that look amazing in that space. So happy to hear next steps for, and this is a positive one.
And I think what, to your point, Council President, a fence, I was just there Thursday evening, and a fence has been put up around the whole property, which will definitely curtail some of the debris that we had been seeing on the street and around the area, just to we'll keep it a little more contained. I think that will be helpful until the actual work gets done. And I'm hoping that next steps will also be working with the Highland Avenue Station and New Jersey Transit.
Yes, that would be exciting to have a Midtown direct line. Absolutely, that's exciting. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is pending matters, new matters, council discussion.
I don't have anything for council discussion, pending matters. Do any of my council colleagues have? Councilwoman Castellino.
I'm not sure if we have Mr. Lepore still here or Mr. Gross can answer this.
I see Mr. Lepore is still on.
Okay. I'm just curious now as we're trying to climb our way out of this pandemic, the jitney ridership, has it increased the past couple month or so? Just wondering what the number, not that I need the exact numbers, but just kind of where we're at with it.
It's increasing, but nowhere's near to where we were 18 months ago or 19 months ago.
How are we doing with, I know drivers were a problem
we're
before
still,
the pandemic. How are we doing now?
We're still running a reduced schedule. And part of that is because of the demand for drivers, as well as lack of demand by riders.
Okay.
My instructions to mobility coach have been to pursue drivers. We don't have to bring all of them back at the same time. As they get one, we'll expand the service. Otherwise, we're likely to lose that driver.
Is there any kind of way we could send to, I guess, from the writers, a monkey survey or whatever they call those surveys that go out, and just to see who is permanently at home now, or what kind, how often they travel, just to get some kind of handle on where we're at? Because I know my son is pretty much permanently working from home now, hasn't gone back yet to the city. So just to get a handle on it, if they anticipate going back, and I know a lot of offices have downsized in the city. Some are going back. So just to get some kind of idea.
I can work through Facebook or our Facebook page and set up a survey on that page, find out who's going, whether they're going every day, some days, or who's not going at all.
If that's helpful to you. I mean, I don't want to make more work for you. God knows you have enough work on a good day, but just to get some kind of handle on the situation moving forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lepore. That's all, Council President, I had tonight.
I'm wondering if maybe we can ask our the manager of our township Facebook page to create that poll and manage it, so that Mr. Lepore, who is
extremely busy.
I'll work with Mr. Bashkoff.
Okay.
On that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilwoman Williams.
Yeah, so that was going to be my commentary, that if we were to do a Facebook poll, that would be probably the quickest way to assess ridership. And one of the detriments of using social media as any type of assessment tool is those who don't have social media, who don't go on social media, who don't respond. You know, are we getting a true representation of ridership, or are we getting a true representation of ridership members who are on social media? So we just have to be careful with how we are going to assess, and then come back and use that information to perhaps modify whatever transportation routes we have available. My initial question wanted to address what is available on our Facebook page. I do not transport into New York, so I have no reference as to what the prior schedule looked like. So I'm just asking, have we put the modified schedule on on our social media or township pages so that riders do have the updated schedule as opposed to the pre-COVID schedule?
Honey, don't we have an app also?
Well, we have an app to determine a bus's location.
Okay.
But the Facebook page has an announcement that links you to the town's website where they will get the updated and current schedules.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councilwoman Williams?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure we have our updated schedule available so people are looking at accurate information. That was a question that I actually received not too long ago. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councilwoman McCartney.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think I appreciate Councilwoman Williams' point about Facebook, but there is the Jitney group itself. So that might be the first stop right there, to put something right there with the Jitney group, because they are constantly looking at that to see what that, where the service is and if anything's been modified and if it's running on any particular day. My question was really for Lenny also. I'm not sure if he was on when I had asked Anthony Puglisi, and I know tomorrow is the pedestrian safety meeting. Two things hopefully are on the agenda. One would be the sidewalks on Mount Pleasant Avenue between Prospect and Wedgewood, or I don't know how far up they can go, but is that something that we're actually looking at?
Well, it's something we will need to look at with the state. The state at this point has indicated they're not in a position to finance it. So if anything, then that's something we would have to finance on our own. I'm not sure if it needs placement from Prospect all the way to Pleasant Valley Way, or I know that it's not. I know Mr. Daniel has talked about filling in one or two blocks. So I will look at that and have to come up with some cost estimates for that.
And I don't know that you were on before when I was asking Anthony Puglisi about Strider lights on Prospect Avenue. Is that something
I
we
didn't
can
hear you
address?
ask it, but
Okay.
I did hear some comments about that.
As far as, I didn't hear any
No,
comments. It was just a
maybe I did
question
hear it
between
before. I
Northfield
thought-
and Mount Pleasant Avenue, that there is so much activity there.
Well, only one section of Mount Pleasant Avenue is county regulated. That's east of Prospect Avenue. But I
No,
can
no, I
follow.
meant the Strider lights between Northfield and Mount Pleasant Avenue.
Oh,
Right along Prospect.
Along Prospect, and I will talk
Right.
to him about that.
Please.
And also the county engineer.
Yes, 'cause I knew he would be at the meeting tomorrow night, if that's
Okay.
something you could put on. Thank you.
What are Strider lights?
Strider lights keep the deer out of the road. And if you've been on Prospect, I'm on Prospect every day, and there's a lot going on Prospect in that particular, between all the yards from Ridge Road and Prospect Avenue, the front yards, they're so deep. And then you have the golf course on the other side. So there's quite a bit of activity there. Deer activity, I meant. So
Council,
just for the
thank you.
I'm sorry, for the safety of the drivers. To place the Strider lights.
Good suggestion. Thank you, Councilwoman McCartney. Councilwoman Castellino.
So just going back to Mr. Lepore, when Councilwoman McCartney just mentioned Mr. Daniels, is that also, and I apologize to everyone because I still having issues with my emails. I haven't been getting all the emails today. I got about 20 of them after I put in a request for, to see what was going on. And I caught up on the one email from him today. So on Pleasant Valley Way by that bus stop, that's what you meant. Councilwoman, were you talking about that?
No,
sidewalk there
no,
where?
no, this is
the
right
re-
on Mount Pleasant Avenue, just past PSE&G,
Okay, so,
opposite the entrance to the Essex County Country Club.
okay, thank you. So now, also, remember Mr. Lepore back on Pleasant Valley Way? Where, was that ever resolved?
This is over by the jug handle, I believe. you're referring
Yes.
to. I've been trying to get some information out of the state where they want us to participate in the cost. And the only reason why I'm trying to do that is if this is something we're going to finance, if it's a big number,
Pricely, yeah.
we may not be so interested in financing that. So
Mhm,
I will
mhm.
keep pursuing that with the state to get an idea of what kind of monies they're talking about.
Okay, yeah, because this has been going, this is like a couple years,
Right.
like he's been advocating for that, and I understand, I just, if you could just, I sent you an email today, if you could just respond back to him, please, I appreciate it.
We've had much better success through the years working with our county as far as upgrading
Yes.
signals and pedestrian signals at county signals. The state, not so much.
Okay, maybe we have to get in touch with our assemblyman.
Possibly.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
And
Councilwoman,
that-
Cook,
Yes, thank you. A grant came out today. I saw an email today on the NJDOT.
yes,
Yeah.
Was
I
that
just,
really just for a study, or that really wasn't for funding? That seemed to me that it was really just an assessment type of grant. Do you know, Len, did you see that one?
it reads that it is a TA set aside design assisted program.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
really
no,
funding.
that's
Mhm.
going to be pursued for our transportation alternative grant that we received for Washington Street. So that's
Yeah.
to help with the design phase of that project. And
Okay.
I think there's a webinar next Wednesday, the 20th.
20th, from 10 to 12.
Mhm.
That's also very exciting.
Yeah,
Next
Really
steps
good.
for the Washington Street area. Really good.
Tory Corner, yeah.
Yes. Speaking of our streets and our pedestrians, I don't know, Chief, if you're still on, with respect to all of the vehicular, unfortunately, accidents that we have been experienced both within the community, surrounding community. We saw a it was a dump truck that looked like it fell on a vehicle right at the corner of Northfield and Gregory, unfortunately a pedestrian death. Can you just speak to, are we or can we do some sort of, I know it's common sense for us not to drive like we're in the Indy 500 in and around town or onto 80, but what can we do as a municipality to start outside of ticketing everyone? And maybe it takes that, I don't know, but it seems that every time every week, there's something.
Yeah.
It's not an easy topic to talk about in a short period of time. There's three major components. It's education, engineering, and enforcement is a part of it, the three E's. We do an analysis of our accident data every 2-week comp stat period. We look at these things and we determine at what places and times the accidents are having, what the underlying contributing factors are, and that's where we target our enforcement and post our people to take action in those locations. We work very closely with Lenny. He probably talks to the people in traffic more than I do, to be honest with you. And we make engineering changes. We do the studies for Lenny so that he has the data to determine what needs to be done as far as the engineering and the education. We have our website. We put out. I get a weekly message on traffic and safety issues from the State Chiefs Association. We publish that through Richie McDonald to our website. We work with the kids in the schools. We try to cover all the bases, and I always say we can always do better. So if anybody's got any ideas of some of the things we can do, I'm always eager to do that. We work closely with Jerry Garino and the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board. We have people at those meetings. There's anything else that you think we're not doing, we can. I'm not shy from criticism. I'll take it and respond to it.
No, unfortunately, I don't. I just am, I'm feeling probably like so many of us in our community, just really, heartbroken over all of the incidences that we see. So maybe just a general call out to everyone, just to remind everyone, slow down, slow down. It's really, it's getting bad out there. And maybe it's just because we've been home and have forgotten how to drive in the last 2 years almost.
true.
Please slow
And
down.
this doesn't necessarily, I'm not going to comment on our most recent
No.
pedestrian tragedy. That's an active investigation, but just in general, a lot of times that these accidents occur, it's you hate to blame somebody who gets killed, but it's kind of the fault lies as much with much or more with the pedestrian often than it does with the motorist. They're dressed in black, they're walking down a roadway with, not on a sidewalk or on roadways without sidewalks, they're jaywalking, crossing where they shouldn't cross,
Yeah.
things like that. And those things contribute to these tragedies.
I will tell you, Chief, and I won't say when, but when in undergrad, and I went to Rutgers in Newark for undergrad in the evening, and sometimes running late, you do jaywalk, and I actually got stopped and ticketed for jaywalking, and I don't jaywalk anymore. I will go to the corner and cross. I was surprised. I really actually became indignant over the fact that you're going to give me a ticket for what? But it was a lesson learned. So
They do that at a lot of the colleges. Yeah.
Lesson learned.
Yeah.
All right, my council colleagues, administration, do we have anything else?
Oh.
Yes, Councilwoman.
I'm sorry. Just real quick, and this is for Madam Clerk tonight. Just a reminder with the upcoming election, I had mentioned it back in June. Just make sure that all the polls have, that they have their privacy screens. When I went to vote in June, from where I was at and other complaints I heard is, there weren't any privacy screens. And then you're handing the ballot and, the person, looks at it as they're scanning. So I don't know what the procedure is going to be for this election, but I know people, they like their privacy when they vote.
Yes,
So-
that was an issue, and I'm actually attending a training session tomorrow down in Newark in the morning, so I will pass that along. Maybe they can they do tell the poll workers and they do train them. It's mandatory training, I know. Maybe they can put some sort of instructional, information or.
But isn't there like a separate place where people could go fill out as opposed to them sitting there and people are standing up looking down?
Well,
at
they
them?
do. When you go in to vote,
No.
they're supposed to offer you. I know.
We didn't have it at where I went, and 3 other people complained to me about that.
No, I understand, but this is
Yeah.
what they're supposed to do. So the poll workers obviously aren't doing what they're supposed to do. I don't know
But
what
if
the
they're not
answer.
given the material, wasn't like they had anything there that they could have used. I mean, shouldn't there be a separate table?
Oh, no,
with-
there was. They absolutely had what they
Mhm.
needed. They just didn't provide it to the voters.
Okay. Well, that
Yeah,
needs to
they
be looked
absolutely
into.
had the privacy screens, but they did
Mhm.
not offer it to the voters.
Yeah, no one should feel uncomfortable walking into a polling.
I agree
place.
100%, 100%. So I'll mention it tomorrow again, and because it definitely was a problem.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of our
Have
agenda.
a motion to adjourn.
I have one little thing.
Absolutely,
I wanna
thank you.
wish- Sorry, Councilwoman Williams, but this is very important. I want to
ABC
wish
hearing?
Councilwoman McCartney a happy birthday tomorrow.
Oh, happy
thank
birthday,
you.
Happy
Councilwoman.
birthday, Councilwoman.
Happy
you were-
birthday.
I thought you were gonna schedule an ABC hearing.
No.
Just for fun.
Yeah, no.
Are we gonna sing happy birthday?
No,
No.
why not?
No.
Is there a
Okay.
motion to adjourn?
Go have
So
dinner.
moved.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, West Orange. Good night.
All right.
Stay-